has taken control, shoveling dirt in every hole. Predators to condemn your soul, watching you and watching me. We're all connected but separated, misunderstood and so frustrated. A million armies of one have invaded, watching you and watching me. We live behind glass curtains and act like nothing's wrong. Soon you will belong. I know you're out there somewhere. We've watched you for so long. Wait for you to fall. We'll expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. The little brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized. Everyone's got an electric eye, we're the digital spies. They've watched you for so long. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. We the people have taken over. We the people are little brother, standing by to dethrone each other, watching you and watching me. Paranoid, the lens is our weapon, desensitized in our lust for attention, democratized by our voyeur obsessions, watching you and watching me. Slaves to perfection, don't let them project you as you are. Reveal your every flaw. I know you're out there somewhere. We've watched you for so long. Wait for you to fall. We'll expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. Little brother wants to make headlines, be immortalized. Everyone's got an electric eye, we're the digital spies. They've watched you for so long. I know you're out there somewhere watching me. I know you're out there somewhere. This is the new totalitarian state. 1,000 eyes are waiting for you to break. Stay in line, don't make a mistake. We're watching. We watched you for so long. We wait for you to fall. We will expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere watching me.
outdoor experience begin right now. From high atop the mountains of British Columbia to you listening around the world, this is Spaced Out Radio. You can follow us on our website, spacedoutradio.com, on Twitter, @SpacedOutRadio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. You can follow us on Instagram, Scott, or on our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show.
Superman, that we're the only ones who can be strong, but we break on command, 'cause women rule the world.
Buckle up, space travelers. It's time to go for a ride as we are live on Spaced Out Radio.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Said the deeper I go, the deeper I fall.
Good evening and welcome to Spaced Out Radio. Tonight I am your host, Dave Scott, and thank you so much for tuning in and listening at the Spaced Out Radio's website, spacedoutradio.com, and on Spreaker. As once again we come in from the frozen Canadian tundra, battle our way past the wild animals. Literally, there was just a deer outside my door. Sidestep Bigfoot and enter Uncle Jimbo's cabin, stoke the fire, heat this place up, and broadcast you live on this Thursday night, early Friday morning if you're on the East Coast. Here at Spaced Out Radio, we are broadcasting 3 hours a night, 7 days a week. That's because we want to be your official one-stop shop when it comes to supernatural, UFOlogical, conspiratorial, spiritual, and so much more. Spaced Out Radio's theme music, if you like it, is from the guitar god himself, Ron Bumblefoot Thal. You can find Bumblefoot's album, Little Brother is Watching, by going to our website, spacedoutradio.com. If you're a social media junkie like I am, you can follow us on Twitter, @SpacedOutRadio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, I can be followed at Dave Scott SOR. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, Spaced Out Radio Show. That's where we store our archives. And our website is spacedoutradio.com. At this time, as we do every night, we welcome in our fans listening in on the SHR Media Network, in the Spaced Out Radio chat room on Spreaker, along with our fans at Euphoria Chronicles on Facebook, and the SOR Space Travelers, as well as online at Paranormal Forum. If you're a fan of Spaced Out Radio, coming soon, it's only a couple weeks away, is our Space Travelers membership. It's brand new. It's only costing $5 a month. We've got prizes lined up, private group interviews, going to be a special section on our website, and so much more. Hey, we're going to give you a hell of a lot more than just access to our archives. Tonight's show is brought to you by Rivulet Reiki and Readings, providing healings in person or at a distance. PurplePlates.com, helping heal your body, mind, and soul. 80,000 people a month read the New Agora newspaper, and the iTunes app, Spirit Storybox. It's the official ghost hunting app of Spaced Out Radio. Spaced Out Radio is the main media outlet for the Alien Cosmic Expo happening later this month, June 24th to 26th in Brantford, Ontario, Canada. The 3-day event will be a breakdown of experiences from contact experiencers like Travis Walton to the scientific and political side, as we seem to be drawing even closer to disclosure. Leading up to the ACE conference, we will be having many guests speaking at the event, coming on the air live with us, like tonight's guest, Zland Communications' Victor Viggiani. Victor is a much-respected researcher in the field of ufology. On his website, zlandcommunications.blogspot.com, Victor breaks down everything from government reports to following the intense coverage of what's happening south of the border with John Podesta and Hillary Clinton, as part of their campaign Is Disclosure of UFO and ET reports. With any accomplishment of disclosure, there not only has to be pressure from the public, but the mainstream media has to get on board as well. We'll see how that goes. We'll talk to see if the truth is actually working. And for those like Victor who want the truth out there, is the media truly doing their job? We bring in Victor Viggiani now to Spaced Out Radio. Victor, thank you so much for being with us tonight. How are you?
Just fine. Thank you very much for having me on, Dave. I do really appreciate it, and it's great to have so many people tuning in and hopefully listening to the flow of events that are leading us all towards some sort of disclosure event, and that's what it's all about.
Well, I have to tell you, I was pretty excited when Bob Mitchell, who's been on this show about 4 times in the last 3 months now, actually approached me and said, Dave, you know what? You're one of the only Canadian shows that talks about this subject, let alone the only Canadian show that goes 7 days a week. We want you guys to help us out with coverage, and we'll return the favor by helping you guys bring in a bunch of speakers and guests. Well, that's a fair trade for me. You know what I'm saying? Because I think in our country, Victor, and most of our listeners are south of the border and around the world, but in our country in particular, the talk of UFOs is still taboo. The talk of extraterrestrial contact is still kind of under the table type conversation. And I want to get into that with you tonight, maybe later, a little bit later in on the show. But first, let's introduce you to our audience. You're with Zland Communications. It's your little baby that you have going. Tell us about Zland.
Well, essentially, Zland Communications is the only Canadian news network that deals with the issue that we're talking about tonight. And essentially, we're all about obtaining and distributing as much information as possible about the idea that we are being engaged by off-world civilizations. There's no other news organization in Canada, and I will go so far as to say that in the world that deals with this issue in the same way that Zland Communications does. We're a one-stop shopping place to come and look at all the issues. We constantly publish press releases. We're doing a lot of that with regard to the Alien Cosmic Expo, and we also distribute information that's current in the UFO field. I really don't like the term UFO, but I guess we use it because it's familiar to everyone. I tend to really look at the idea, as far as Zland Communications is concerned, look at the idea that we are being engaged by extraterrestrials. Excuse me. And that, to me, is the essence of what we do. This engagement by off-world civilizations is the key issue. We're not really talking about funny lights in the sky or counting lights in the sky and what the weather was like, and Uncle Martha and Aunt Fred sitting on the back porch, looking at some orbit happening. I mean, that's all very, very fascinating, very important in a lot of ways, but it doesn't lead us to an understanding of what's really going on. And what is really going on is this is a political idea, a political situation that we're involved in. The engagement of these off-world civilizations is a political situation, and that's the way we treat it. We want to politicize this issue and make the news media understand that we are being engaged by off-world civilizations, and the UFOs are only one manifestation of that. And a lot of times people kind of, I think they confuse the issues by talking UFO all the time. And the terminology unidentified flying object, in fact, is a misnomer. These are not unidentified flying objects. They are. We know what they are. Now, people will say, well, yeah, you know what? It's government stuff. Government lights, government vehicles, or whatever. Well, that may be true to a certain extent at the present time. However, over the course of history, as far back as the late 1800s, we know that these so-called funny lights in the sky manifested themselves, and they, in fact, were the extraterrestrials of history. And that's what we want to deal with. how these things have been interacting with us. These off-world civilizations have been interacting with us for literally hundreds, if not thousands of years, Dave. And a lot of people miss that point. So when we talk about UFOs and they say, well, it's only government flying machines, that only sort of applies right now to the current situation, because the government has had the opportunity to put together a lot of these back-engineered types of vehicles. These things, I've seen them myself. I've been to Area 51. I've seen at least 6 different types of so-called UFOs, or whatever you want to call them, or back-engineered. I know what they look like. But the fact of the matter is they do not necessarily represent the extraterrestrial presence. They're only a shadow of it. So what Zland Communications tries to do is look at this situation as a political idea, that we all have to look at it in terms of being engaged by our galactic community that is knocking at our door. And unfortunately, the news media and the heavyweights in our government are not answering the door. These people have been knocking on our door for decades, if not hundreds of years, and our political people are ignoring this entreaty and this kind of contact, and it's a very sad situation. So Zland Communication attempts to really get at the politics of the so-called UFO ET phenomenon. So that's what we're all about, basically.
And I can appreciate that, and there is so much more about the experiencer, and you're going more on the government disclosure political side. That is your angle with it. But a lot of people, Victor, right now are really taking the people who are having these experiences and shoving them to the side, saying, you know what, we understand things are happening to you, but in the real world, you're not as important as you once were. You know, in the 60s, 70s, we had Benny and Barty Hill. We had Travis Walton. We've had other people step up with their contact. Why do you think there has been a shift today in the fact that there are so many researchers out there basically telling experiencers you're no longer important compared to where it is today, where disclosure happens to be the main focus with everybody?
Well, that's a really good point, and we should spend a few moments on that, because your statement that some researchers are sort of dismissing or at least ignoring or giving the contactees little time. Nothing could be more wrong. And a lot of times when I'm on radio programs like this, I already state contact has been made. We're always waiting for that so-called vehicle to land on the White House lawn, that whole kind of that image. Nothing could be further from the truth. Contact has been made. And the people who have had these experiences, as John Mack calls them, experiencers, they're the ones that have had the contact. These are the ones that have had contact with the off-world civilizations that are knocking on our door. And they're being, spoken to or provided with experiences to enlighten them as to why all of this contact is being made. And they're the ambassadors. They're the ones, they're the emissaries for contact. So I dealt with probably in my past about 16 experiencers and in the past, and it helped kind of guide them and listen to them. That's all they want. They want to be listened to. They don't necessarily want any notoriety, and that's another thing that's sort of a mark of a contactee. They're really not the people. They're not the flag wavers. So they do it in a silent way. So it's up to people like you and I to put these people in the forefront and say, listen, these experiences are real. There's something going on, and this is where contact is being made. And once disclosure does occur, will be a political force that makes disclosure a real entity within society. It will be the thing that ramps up and makes the rest of society stand up and listen and look at what's going on in terms of the politics of the situation. But when the general public finds out and realizes, it comes to really understand that these experiencers are the ones that have made contact, it will completely change the whole character of the disclosure event. So wrapped up in disclosure is the fact that we have human beings who have already been contacted by off-world civilizations, and that will become part and parcel of the disclosure event. And everything that's leading up to it, and the way disclosure is being portrayed now, and the way the talk is about disclosure, is eventually going to be a realization that there are, in fact, human beings that have experiences with off-world civilization directly, not just watching lights in the sky, but these people have felt, tasted, heard, and experienced the entire spectrum of extraterrestrial contact. They're the ones that are being taken. They're the ones that are being examined. They're the ones that are being provided the first contact. Why the ETs are doing this, we're not really sure. What sense is there to what they're doing with humanity? Is it a benevolent thing? Is it something that's constant? We just don't know. And we're trying to figure that out. And the contactees are the ones that eventually will be able to tell the full story.
And that makes sense. And I agree with you that disclosure is already happening because contact has already happened. It's happening every night to hundreds of thousands of people in North America, let alone the world. And even doing this show, Victor, we have to be careful and we have to vet people because it's not interesting to talk about somebody who saw three lights in the sky make a curve and then disappear back in 1989 in the middle of Northwest Territories, and the sighting lasted 2 seconds. You know, there's nothing there for us. We need the heart of the story.
Yeah, that's right. That used to be cool. At one time, that was wow. That was a big wow event. But that has become sort of passé. Now, it's hard to really... it's unfortunate that we have to say that because a sighting event is important. There's no doubt about it. It is important, but too many people get too wrapped up in the idea of cataloging these sightings and making a big deal about these things. We have to move past that, and that's one of the reasons that I'm very, very critical of the Mutual UFO Network, MUFON. I've always had a very kind of sore spot for that organization. Although when I began this whole thing back in 1975, I was sort of co-opted by MUFON Canada to be part of their organization. I said, well, yeah, fine, let's give that a try and see what it's all about, because I knew very, very little back in 1975 about all of this. And I got to realize that MUFON really wasn't a think tank. MUFON was not a politically activated entity. All they wanted to do was go and do sighting reports, and that's where it ended. They did nothing about any of those kinds of things. And once I got to see that this was a political situation, this was a politicized version of reality, then I began to see how off base MUFON was. And I left the organization, and I don't have really any real great fond respect for what MUFON does. Now, I do have friends that are in MUFON, and I respect what they do in the sense of their tenacity, but they've got to go a step further and become a political entity. If MUFON Canada or MUFON throughout the world in North America were to step up to the microphone and engage the media, the Dan Aykroyds of the world, and if Dan Aykroyd is right now, I would entreat him. He is one of the most important, it could be one of the most important people in Hollywood regarding this whole issue. We need celebrity Dan to come forward and say, folks, listen to what's going on. Pay attention. But unfortunately, Dan is just taking a back seat, and he's not coming forward to be the political entity as a celebrity that he could. So he could be a severe activist in all of this and really turn this thing upside down in literally minutes by calling a press conference and engaging all of the other Hollywood, celebrities that have had experiences themselves. We know that there are Hollywood people and other people of notoriety who have had experiences. Now, I'm not sure if Dan has or not, but we know that they have to be included. Sports figures. You go all the way through the whole spectrum. There are a lot of important people that have gone through the same experiences that some of the contactees that you and I know. But for some reason, there seems to be a lid on that kind of information. So, with all due respect to what MUFON does, they have to step up to the plate and really be counted and become a politicized entity within this whole issue. And I guarantee you, if people like the Dan Aykroyds of the world were to step forward, this would be on 60 Minutes. It would be on Dateline. It would be on all the major television shows in a heartbeat. So it's important that we understand who's really doing the hard work here. You know, who's got the information, who's got all the cataloged information. MUFON does, but what are they doing with it? As far as I'm concerned, they're doing nothing with it. And I will continue to be critical of MUFON until they wake up, smell the roses, and do what's right, and step up to the plate.
Victor, do you believe MUFON has been infiltrated? And the reason why I ask you that is because there are rumors that high above, not the field investigators, and we've had a number of them on this show,
Right.
but the higher-ups, led by Robert Bigelow, who is apparently funding it. He's also the owner of the Skinwalker Ranch. There seems to be political ties up above in MUFON where the real, true, breathtaking reports of experience, of contact, of landings, isn't really getting reported the way it should. Have you heard of that, or do you believe then that MUFON could be infiltrated by some alphabet government agency down south to kind of keep them quiet?
I can use one word, absolutely. And I'll tell you exactly why. In 2003, Dave, my wife and I went on an exchange. She went on a teaching exchange to Canberra, Australia. We switched houses with another teacher. So, we're living down in Australia for a full year in someone else in Canberra, Australia. She did her teaching job, and I did some other research kinds of things. And another person came up and lived in our house. And while we were there, and Canberra is the capital of Australia, and while we were there, she was teaching at a very high-profile school. And at that school, it was a private school. And at the school, all of the children who were the children of the American Embassy, the United States Air Force, the Foreign Service. These children went to this school, and some of them were in my wife's class. We got to know the parents of these people. And we got to know about 7 or 8 families, different families, who were directly associated with the American Embassy and with the United States Air Force, a captain specifically in the United States Air Force. And he would not tell me what his job was. All he would do is tell me that I work in a big barn and we have all of the information about what comes and goes within the atmosphere. That's as far as he would talk to me about. The other individual that we did get to know was with the State Department. He was with the CIA. We sat in his office, and I asked him, I said, I'm into some very kind of different sort of political stuff back in Canada and here too. He said, oh, what would that be? And I said, well, I do research on the engagement of off-world civilizations. You probably know the term as UFOs. And this man sat and stared at me for about 40 seconds before his mouth opened again. And his stare was blank. His stare was steely-eyed. And he said, we really don't want to talk about that here. And I said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, we can't talk about it here. So we managed to talk about it on the golf course several times. And directly, his direct involvement in the State Department, he told me out on the golf course twice that when he first was associated with the CIA, one of his jobs was to go to all of the conferences in Wisconsin, Illinois. That's the state that he worked in at the time, and sit in the back and just watch and listen. So if MUFON had a conference, he would go to it, sit, listen, just to find out what the MUFON people knew, what they were talking about. He kept his ear to the ground, and he would report back to his authorities, oh, here's what this chapter of MUFON believes. Or he would go to another conference and sit and listen. So he was sort of like a plant within sort of the public face of some of the MUFON activities going on. They kept their ear to the ground. So that kind of revelation to me proved that the United States government is well involved in this. They want to find out what we know. And when you say the word infiltrated, I'm not sure if it goes quite that far. It may well be done in a certain way. It was in the past. We know that people in the Navy and in the Air Force were, in fact, some of the MUFON organizations within the United States. But the association and relationship that I had with this young fellow, very young man at the time, indicated to me that the United States government is fully aware of what we're all about, and they follow it very, very closely. So that's my confirmation that the government sources, the government people know exactly what's going on, Dave, and they keep their pulse. They keep the pulse of what's going on in organizations like mine and Steve Bass's Paradigm Research Group, the work of Richard Dolan, and the activity and activist nature of Paul Hellyer, Stanton Friedman. All of these people, they know exactly what's going on. So in terms of infiltration, I don't know if it goes that far. It very well might be infiltration, but I know they do watch us very, very, very closely. And in some ways, buttons and pull strings to make sure that certain things happen and certain things do not happen. I can pretty much guarantee that that is in fact the case.
We are with Victor Viggiani from Zland Communications tonight on Spaced Out Radio. We're going to hop out for our first break of the night. When we come back, we're going to get into a little bit more MUFON. And Victor, we got some questions. When you were in Australia, we got a few people asking if you ever went to Pine Gap down there. So we're going to find out about that. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott. Talk to you on the other side.
Would you like to become one of our space travelers? All you have to do is click on the Space Travelers icon at spacedoutradio.com. For only $5 a month, you can get access to some great prizes, as well as private monthly shows, newsletters, and a members-only section on our website. Become a space traveler today.
Hi there. This is your medium, Joanna, from Spaced Out Weekend, 2 Mediums and a Large. I would love it if you would come and join us with host James Tyson every other Sunday on Spaced Out Weekend. Together, we will take your calls and your questions live. Our goal is to provide you with a positive outlook on deep questions that you may have. Questions regarding love, relationships, money, or whatever else is on your mind. Come and check us out at spacedoutradio.com.
Every Saturday and Sunday night, as Dave Scott wanders aimlessly in the wilderness, you can come hang out with me, James Tyson, in Spaced Out Weekend. Starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, I'll take you along as we talk with some of the best experts in their fields. SpacedOutRadio.com is the place to find us. So sit down, relax, put your feet up. Enjoy the topics like the paranormal, supernatural, intuitiveness, and so much more. Hope to see you there.
Hi there, this is Elizabeth Anglin, and on the last Monday of every month, I join Dave Scott for Spaced Out Radio's Cosmic Passport. We delve into everything from extraterrestrial contact to animal communication. It's a lot of fun, and every month it's something different and exciting. I would love it if you would join us. You can hear and learn from my experiences, and I'd like to know about yours as well. Cosmic Passport on spacedoutradio.com.
Hey everybody, this is Patrick Webster Small, and I'm here to bring you the Webster Phenomena every Saturday night, live at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern. If you're looking for aliens and extraterrestrials, well, we've got them. Big and tall, short and small. You're bound to find what you're looking for, so join me on the Webster Phenomena right here on Spaced Out Radio.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry. Visit them today at purpleplates.com for mind, body, and spirit, and expect a miracle.
Have you ever wondered about those weird and strange creatures people have reported throughout history? Do you wonder if those stories are real? Me too, and that's why I started Cryptopia.us. Hey, this is Rob Morphy, crypto historian. Join me once a month on Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott, where we will get into the odd and bizarre reports, from the Dover demon to hairy hominids and everything in between. I will break down what people like you and me are seeing at spacedoutradio.com.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost?
Look no further than Spaced Out Radio.
SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click on to check out our daily, weekly, and monthly packages to play on radio
or our website, including social media.
From commercial spots to banners, we have it all.
Check out our competitive pricing today.
Want to connect with us online? Find us on Facebook, Spaced Out Radio Show, on Twitter, @Spaced Out Radio, on Instagram, Dave Scott, SOR, on YouTube, Spaced Out Radio Show, and our website is spacedoutradio.com. All right, space travelers, here comes the second half hour of Spaced Out Radio. Welcome back to Spaced Out Radio. Tonight, I am your host, Dave Scott. Tomorrow night on the show, our Keith Andrews is back. Yes, it's that time of the month where we have our alien expert coming on the show. First Friday he does it of every month. Our Keith Andrews tomorrow night. We welcome in everyone listening in on Paranormal Forum, on the SHR Media Network, in the Spaced Out Radio chat room, on Spreaker, and of course on Facebook at Euphoria Chronicles, and our mainstay, the SOR Space Travelers. Welcome to tonight's show. If you want to follow us on social media, you can do so on Twitter @Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, I can be followed at Dave Scott SOR. Our YouTube channel is Spaced Out Radio Show, and our website is spacedoutradio.com. It'll have a whole new look in just a couple of weeks. Get ready, space travelers. Tonight we are talking disclosure, the Canadian side of it, with Victor Viggiani from Zland Communications. We bring Victor back into the show. Victor, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Once again, it's a pleasure to be with you, David.
Victor, I got a couple questions about you going to Australia. And people are wondering, have you ever visited Pine Gap while you were there? Because it is said to be like Australia's Area 51.
No, I did not get there. And the reason that I didn't eventually was because it is extremely difficult to even get close to that position. And plus the fact it's in an area where it's extremely inhospitable. It's not like Area 51, where Area 51 is a relatively accessible location in the Nevada desert north of Las Vegas. It has several small towns around it, and it's just pretty accessible to go and sit outside the boundaries and watch and look at what's going on. But Pine Gap is in the middle of Australia, extremely difficult to get to by car. If you do go by car, you're literally taking your life in your hands because there's nothing around there. There's literally nothing that you can depend upon in terms of civilization to bail you out if you do get get caught up in the Australian outback. So it's not a place that you'd want to go to, to risk life and live essentially just to get out there. So Australia's a fun continent. Not a whole lot in the middle of the continent. Most of the population is around the perimeter of the huge continent. There's not much going on in the middle, so it's not some place that you would want to go to and visit and try to eke out an existence for 1 or 2 days, because it's not like you would go to a hotel and hang out and then go and visit as you would near Area 51. Very difficult situation, and very different situation than Area 51. My days, and I spent 6 days in total outside of Area 51, which is something that a lot of people do on a frequent basis, and that was a real eye-opener. But no, I did not have any kind of experience with Pine Gap.
A lot of people believe that a lot of the hidden technology, as Area 51 has become public now, shall we say, by President Obama a couple years ago, and they believe that a lot of the technology that was there has been moved forward. Do you believe that Area 51 is still the hot spot for reinventing maybe down spacecraft and other technologies, or do you think that that's been moved into a more private place like Dugway or Dulce or over to Pine Gap?
Well, speaking from personal experience, I can attest to the fact that what goes on in the night sky around Area 51, over Area 51, is absolutely mind blowing. I can assure you that what I saw there were in fact some type of back engineered vehicle. They were not airplanes. When we first got to Area 51, or outside, just off Groom Lake Road, the camp area that we spent time in for 3 days on our first trip there, we saw regular airplanes in the sky. They were just moving back and forth. You could hear them. They had the red lights and the green lights and the whole thing. And they were moving very slowly up in the probably 20 to 30,000 feet. And pretty prosaic, pretty dull, nothing much really going on the first 3 nights. And after those 3 nights, we took off and drove east towards New Mexico and other parts of Arizona. And we visited Dulce, New Mexico, Albuquerque, Roswell. Well, we went to Corona, did a whole lot of investigation, spoke with Loretta Proctor, who was part of the whole Roswell crash scenario with Mac Brazel. Talked to a lot of people, and that it was still there at the time. So we did a huge amount of research and visited Air Force bases. At that time, you could get into these Air Force bases and actually drive around and look at what was going on, speak to people. We visited Los Alamos. Spoke to people who worked in Los Alamos. So we did a lot of investigation. And after all was finished, we drove back towards Las Vegas because that's where we landed. And we made another visit to Area 51 again for another 3 nights. This time we camped out near the Black Mailbox just off Groom Lake Road. And it was on the second night that we were driving towards Groom Lake Road that my wife and I were driving sort of, I guess, what would be northwest on 375. And she said, "Victor, what's that in the sky?" So I pulled the car over and we stopped, and we noticed that it's a very flat area, but off in the distance, in the Tickaboo Valley, there's a huge mountain range off to the north. And it was sort of maybe, 8:30 in the evening, kind of dusk, just getting towards dark. And we looked up into the sky just above those mountains at about a 45-degree angle, and we noticed this white light. And if you, for your listeners' sort of description, if you held a dime, a Canadian, a dime out between your fingers, it was about the size of that dime. A third of the size of the moon, maybe a little bit more, a little bit less. But we noticed this light just hanging. It was just a light in the sky. And, we didn't know what it was. We had no idea. It wasn't moving. And then eventually that light became very different. It became almost like a snowflake. You could almost see through it. It became what I would call diaphanous. It sort of had a sparkly kind of appearance, and it began to rotate very, very, very quickly, and then stopped rotating. And then as soon as that rotation stopped, it began to get a little bit smaller. It shrunk in size, and it got bigger again, like a big snowflake. And then it became a smaller snowflake. It would be pulsing in and out, very slowly. And then eventually, the light started to spin very, very slowly, and then turned into 3 orange lights in a triangular shape. If you could just imagine, the white light disappeared completely. There was no more diaphanous look to it. It was 3 small, very, very, very small orange lights. And these little orange lights were in the shape of a triangle with nothing apparently attaching them, but obviously they were together very tightly. And then they began to rotate very fast at an incredible speed, slowly at first, and then they began to rotate very, very quickly. And then they coalesced once again into this white light, and then, Dave, it shot off like it just literally winked out, just been ping. It was an amazing visual experience that I will never, ever in my life ever forget. So that's the kind of stuff that's going on in the skies over Area 51. What it was, I'm convinced to this day, it was a back-engineered craft of some kind. I can't even begin to tell you what it might have been, but there is no known aircraft or no known any kind of sky entity that I'm aware of that could do the kind of thing that I saw in the sky that night. And then the next night we saw a different kind of visual display with winking on and off as a how can I put it? In a linear fashion, blinking in and out, blinking in and out, blinking in and out on a very kind of fast-paced linear angle. So there's definitely stuff going on out there in Area 51 or Groom Lake, if you want to call it that. And we have people like Mark Cavendish, who has attested to the fact that this place is still alive and well, still doing the back engineered stuff below the surface, still involved in experimental aircraft. So without a doubt, I still think that Area 51, as sort of hackneyed as that phrase is, there is still a lot going on there that we are really not aware of. And the fact that the President of the United States is even talking about it right now gives testament to the fact that, the United States government is being very, very cozy about this, and they're sort of being tongue-in-cheek about it. But the fact of the matter is, when the truth really does come out, we'll find out that Area 51 has always been and still does play an important role in the way the United States government experiments with the back-engineered craft that's of extraterrestrial nature.
You know what? I have a friend of mine who lives in Las Vegas. He's involved in the music scene there, and he saw a major increase in the number of Janet jets that were now parked at McCarran Airport, right on the Strip. Yep. If you've never been to Las Vegas, McCarran International Airport is literally a stone's throw away from the Las Vegas Strip. So one day he decides to follow his curiosity, and he actually followed a person coming out of the area where they park their cars, these Area 51 employees, and he followed them home, trying to be as stealthy as possible. He wanted to see what was up. So he followed the guy almost right to his home, and he turned around and just leaving, because curiosity was getting him. By the time he got back to the intersection, he was surrounded by black SUVs, machine guns, and they asked him for his ID, and they basically gave him an extremely stern warning that if he does that again, there will be some disappearing happening, either jail time or more. So he's never tested that out again. So it is alive and real. It is very alive and real when we go to that. You were talking in the first half hour, Victor, about more celebrities having to come forward, like Dan Aykroyd. We see Tom DeLonge, the former Blink-182 singer, making a bunch of videos, and he has seemed to be garnering a lot of attention when it comes to ufology these days. British singer Robbie Williams, who lives in L.A., is big on the UFO hunt. Shirley MacLaine, the actress, is very much in touch with the ufology field. Why aren't these people, in your mind, banding together like they do in so many other projects to come forward? Do you think that maybe they are being told to keep quiet, or are they looking to make money off of this so that way it's just focusing on what they are doing?
That's a really good question. I really, I'm sort of torn in a lot of ways to respond to that, because, I know Shirley MacLaine, and I've spoken to her about this. We were trying to get her up here to Toronto for the Modern Knowledge Tour, and she didn't. She decided not to, for whatever reason. I really don't know. And her associate Britt Elder was kind of instrumental in trying to help that contact come to some sort of fruition. It's a difficult thing. I think a lot of times some of these celebrities, and it's like every other aspect of life, the political realm that people exist in, lawyers, doctors, police officers. It infiltrates every single aspect of our life. So, when we talk about contactees, being people who have had experiences with extraterrestrials, or who do their own sort of closet research and all this kind of thing, they suffer from a similar kind of guilt by association. And if they were to make too much of a big deal about it, it could cost them, with the Hollywood contracts, music contracts, career. That's my take on it. I don't think that these celebrities have been told. I mean, it's just my opinion. I don't think they've been told to be quiet. I don't think Shirley MacLaine. You don't tell Shirley MacLaine to be quiet if you know her at all. But I think that in some way, shape, or form, they seem to feel that there are bigger things going on in their lives, and they're involved in making their money and becoming as a celebrity. And if they were to come forward, in some way, their status as celebrities may be affected. I don't understand that mindset. I really, really don't. If I was a Shirley MacLaine type of individual and believed what I know she does believe, I'd be calling press conferences right, left, and center, and literally challenging the president of the United States. If I had the notoriety that woman has, or once again, like Dan Aykroyd, I would be public in my demands that we sit down and make this an open dialogue about this whole extraterrestrial question. Mr. President, why aren't we talking about this? Why is it a taboo? Why will you not make this an open type of discourse that we all can engage in to talk about what's really going on? And none of them yet have taken that stand. I know Shirley did when she was on the Larry King show a couple of times. Her and Larry King were very, very close, and I know she did make those kind of statements at that time. And Larry King was another person who was very instrumental in bringing the UFO issue forward on CNN. Where and why this doesn't go forward is a mystery to me. Which really means I would sense that there are people who are in charge and say, fine, you can talk about this stuff as much as you want. You can rattle on for hours on your television program or whatever you want to do, but that's as far as you're going to get. We are going to remain silent. We will not respond to you. We will remain mum on this issue. We are not going to make any public statements about the extraterrestrial issue and how it is a political issue. So I think, and it's what I call the glass ceiling, Dave. What we're doing right now on radio, it's fine. I don't think the government has a big problem with it. I do the Richard Syrett show, the conspiracy show with Richard Syrett on Sunday night out of Toronto. We have a huge worldwide network of people that listen to us. And it's fine and dandy for us to talk about that. And that show will never be shut down. The Canadian government is not going to come in and tell Richard to be quiet. But the thing is it never pierces that glass ceiling. It gets to a certain level of notoriety. Regional news, CTV has covered this before. CBC has covered the UFO issue. But that's as far as it gets. It doesn't reach into the House of Commons to the office of the Minister of Defense, where he or she makes comments about this stuff. That's the glass ceiling in effect. And we can only go so far before we bump our heads on this so-called, glass ceiling, and our voice ceases to be heard. So that's the whole idea behind, I think, what the celebrities are involved with. They'll go to a certain extent to discuss it, but they will not make physical challenges, or physical, that's not the right word, but they will not make the political challenges that are necessary to make of our government leaders to at least entertain a civil discourse about this whole issue. So I think there are certain restrictions on them in certain ways, but I'm not quite sure why all this information, as far as celebrities are concerned, are as controlled as you and I understand. It remains to be a mystery to me, Dave, to tell you the really honest truth.
I have a question from Galen in the SOR Space Travelers room for you. When it comes to Area 51, as we were talking moments ago, she is wondering, are these UFOs that are apparently at Area 51, to your knowledge, crashed UFOs that have been reworked, or is it actual extraterrestrials giving them to the government on trade?
I wish I knew the answer to that question. There's a lot of talk about connections between certain governments here on the planet and extraterrestrials. I'm not necessarily a fan of that kind of discourse. It may be happening. It may have happened in the past. The more we speculate that, the more I think we go down a rabbit hole that really doesn't lead us anywhere. In terms of the craft themselves, my understanding is that whatever crashed vehicles are picked up or commandeered or trucked off from their sites, as far as them being extraterrestrial, they're taken someplace. Sometimes they're taken to different locations that we're not aware of. Sometimes they're taken to Area 51. But my sense is that these crash vehicles, parts of these vehicles, are used in experimentation to rebuild or to build back-engineered vehicles. And these are the vehicles that Mark Cavendish speaks of. If you're familiar with his work at all, he has had an interaction with a person who was at Groom Lake and actually saw one of these things levitate and actually saw it in operation. So what the American government is involved in, as far as we know, is that they are attempting to master, and if they have not already done so, the anti-gravitic technology that is part and parcel of how these UFOs move. And that's what I think the United States government is involved in right now. They have the capacity to learn about the anti-gravitic nature of these craft through the craft vehicles and their energy source or whatever propulsion system they're using. So what we're seeing are, in fact, my information is that what we are seeing is vehicles that have been built by the United States government or whatever agencies operate Area 51, and they're back engineered and they're tested. And I'm convinced that what I saw was a back engineered, some sort of a back engineered vehicle. Now we're getting into the other aspect of this, is these so-called black triangles that the people are beginning to see in the sky all over the world. Particularly, some of the manifestations are in Belgium, but then now they're being seen all over the planet. So I think these particular craft, my opinion is that they are back-engineered Earth-type vehicles, man-made vehicles. So in essence, my sense is that Area 51 has always been involved in experimental aircraft. All the spy planes and the thing of the B-2 bombers and all the stealth bombers. These have all been on the drawing board for decades and decades and decades before they actually were made public. The next launching or the next sort of idea that will come out of Area 51, and this is what I'm predicting, will be some sort of anti-gravitic vehicle that will be showcased in one way or another. Now, we already know that some of the stealth aircraft that are being used right now are already using a part of this kind of anti-gravitic technology on their wing edges. The wing edges of some of these craft that are propelled by regular jet propulsion or some sort of ion propulsion are to allow these craft to send a signal out through their wing edges to the molecules of air ahead of them, telling the molecules of air to get out of the way so that they do not create a sonic boom. And so these things can move faster and faster and faster all the time because of the electrogravity that's being used on the wing edges of some of these craft. And that's something that we have found out that is in fact being experimented with respect to Area 51. So they're sort of letting this out and doing it bit by bit by bit to try to understand exactly how these craft work. Now there are people who are in fact of the belief. Ben Rich is one of them. The former CEO of Skunkworks, who passed on several years back. Ben Rich actually stated that we have technology that will take us to the stars, that will take ET home. So his opinion was, and this man was involved in a lot of the Skunkworks operation, as far as he's concerned, that we already have the technology to be a starfaring civilization, but we just don't know it yet. How correct he was or what exactly he was saying, we're not sure. But I know for a fact that Richard Dolan, who's going to be one of our hearing experts, will give testimony about that at the June hearing that we could talk about a little bit later on. So I know Richard Dolan's done a lot of work in terms of understanding what Ben Rich said about this whole idea of the propulsion systems and what we already have, what Richard calls the breakaway civilization. So in answer to the lady's question, I sense that these craft are a constant evolution of what the United States government has picked up in terms of crashed vehicles, and they're using it to their advantage to refine these vehicles in terms of contact with extraterrestrials and exchange. I don't know. I'd be speculating to even to comment on that. But we often say anything is possible. So if you can imagine it, it's probably true.
Victor, we got about 1 minute before we got to go to break, and I can tell you point blank, the closest I've been to a UFO is probably 150 yards. No word of a lie. 150 yards. It landed on the ground. Okay. And I can tell you this. I still don't know what the hell that was. But if I ever have that happen again, my friend, instead of, yelling a lot of expletives is what the F was that? I'm going up to it next time, my friend. And then we're coming to pick you up.
Yep.
We're coming to get you at Bob Mitchell and Grant Cameron and many of the Canadian ufologists out there. We're going to go for a ride and see what's going on. How about that?
Sign me up.
Absolutely. As long as they're the good guys. As long as they're the good guys.
Yeah.
Vic, I'm going to get you to hold on for a couple of minutes. We're going to hop out and take a break here at the top of the hour. Victor Viggiani from Zland Communications is our guest. This is night number 1, guest number 1 of the Alien Cosmic Expo in Brantford, Ontario, June 24th to 26th. Victor will be speaking at that conference. We're going to have a bunch more guests speaking from that conference coming on this show, Spaced Out Radio, leading up to the big event. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott. We'll be right back.
Greetings and salutations, space travelers, from the Chronicles of the Unknown team.
What is Chronicles of the Unknown? I keep hearing about this thing.
It's a new paranormal reality TV show based right here in beautiful British Columbia, Canada. Follow our team as we uncover claims of activity on the Caribou Gold Rush Trail. You can also follow us here every third Monday, where 2 members of our team will be available to answer your questions. We'll give you some equipment updates and some of our experiences on the road, right here on Spaced Out Radio on the Spreaker.com network.
Do you believe you've been in contact with extraterrestrials? Have you seen the Greys, the Mantis, or the Reptilians? I am Samantha Mullet, and on the second Tuesday of each month, you can listen and learn from my experiences with off-worlders on Spaced Out Radio's The ET Experience. With host Dave Scott, we'll sit down and chat about what's going on with our friends from other worlds. We'll also try to answer your questions, so please tune in on the second Tuesday of the month, only on Spaced Out Radio.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio? Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There, you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us, from radio commercials to banners and social media. Have a product you like our hosts to endorse? We can do that too. Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
Did you know that Spaced Out Radio runs 7 days a week? Hi, it's James Tyson from Spaced Out Weekend. Every Saturday and Sunday night, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, you can join me and my guests for some great chatter about what's going on out in the universe, or even in that dark part of the basement you really don't want to go back into. Well, let's find the answers to your experiences together. So come on up to Uncle Jimbo's cabin on the weekend. For more information, look us up at spacedoutradio.com.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Attention Spaced Out Radio listeners. For only $5 a month, you can join Spaced Out Radio Space Travelers. Your membership at spacedoutradio.com will give you access to private fan area on the website, get you a monthly newsletter, draws for monthly swag, and a whole lot more. Sign up today to become a part of the Spaced Out Radio experience.
Right here, this is where we divulge the fruit of our research. Here on the Webster Phenomena every Saturday night at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern on Spaced Out Radio. And we give it up to you guys, all the listeners, and the live listeners usually get something special and hang out in the chat room. And we love to have you. So we'll see you every Saturday night at 8 p.m. You know where.
If you're a fan of social media, you can follow Spaced Out Radio on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. You can also follow us on Instagram, Dave Scott, SOR. Our YouTube channel, where our archives are stored, is Spaced Out Radio Show. And of course, our website is spacedoutradio.com. Welcome back for hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you're listening in on the SHR Media Network, out on Paranormal Forum, on Spreaker, in our Spaced Out Radio chat room, as well as on Facebook at Euphoria Chronicles, and our flagship chat room, the SOR Space Travelers, welcome to tonight's show. Tomorrow night, it's ET night. Our Keith Andrews, the first Friday of the month, will be talking the Alien Connection tomorrow night on this program. If you want to follow us on Twitter, you can do so at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, you can follow me at Dave Scott, SOR. Our YouTube channel is Spaced Out Radio Show, and our website, it'll be revamped in a couple of weeks, Space Travelers, is spacedoutradio.com. Tonight we are talking disclosure and UFOs, leading up to the Alien Cosmic Expo later this month, June 24th to 26th in Brantford, Ontario. Victor Viggiani from Zland Communications is our guest. His website, zlandcommunications.blogspot.com, if you want to check it out. Victor, thank you so much for being here.
It's a pleasure to be with you, David, and I hope that that your listeners are interested in what we're talking about, and perhaps spread the word about the hearing coming up in Brantford, Ontario on June 25th, and it will be definitely an eye-opener for everyone.
I think so. And you know what? I'm proud that, once again, that Bob Mitchell, yourself, have allowed Spaced Out Radio to come on board and bring on a bunch of the speakers that will be at this event to take part in this show. That really means a lot to me and our listeners. So on behalf of all of us, thank you as well, Victor, for doing that.
Well, it's a pleasure. We're sort of, it's a hand-in-glove kind of thing, David, and I think that the more we help each other to get the word out to the general public, I think that's the kind of service that we have to provide, and that's what I think is most important in this whole initiative, and the work that you do, too.
Well, we have a lot of listeners pointing out in the chat room that if that UFO does come back, that we got to pick them up as well. So hopefully there is capacity. You know,
could be a crowded bus.
Exactly, Victor. I want to switch gears a little bit here because down south in the Democratic election process, where Hillary Clinton and John Podesta have teamed up to say if she gets into the White House, disclosure is going to be a very big part of her campaign. John Podesta, of course, is the one leading that because he's basically told Hillary, if you're not interested in disclosing, I'm not interested in helping. I want to focus on this side of the border, though, when it comes to disclosure. Are you surprised that none of the mainstream media, as that has become a hot-button topic over the last couple of weeks in the U.S., that nobody here has whatsoever asked the Prime Minister, the Minister of Defense, or anybody in Ottawa about UFOs?
Well, I'm not surprised. I'm very, very disappointed. However, I look at it, Dave, as a process of what's occurring. And if you take a look at the whole process of what's happening, both in the United States, even Canada, what's happening right now in the United States, if we could start there for a moment in terms of the American experience. If you take a look at what's going on right now, one of the latest truly incredible anomalies that happened, I believe it was back around May 16th. It happened a White House press conference, and the White House press secretary Josh Earnest was asked a question about, what does the president feel about Hillary Clinton exposing these kinds of things in terms of wanting to get to the bottom of that. That kind of question being asked in a White House press conference directly to the president's press secretary is virtually unprecedented. And we take a look at the whole process, and that has not happened ever before, and it happened now. Why has it happened? And I think the reason why it's happened is because of the pressure that we, when I say collectively we, people like the Richard Dolan and Steve Bassett and all of these other individuals, particularly Grant Cameron, is putting on the media to kind of pump this information closer and closer and closer and closer to the surface. So when it rears its head in the room of the press secretary during a White House press conference, we know that this thing is percolating to the surface a little bit more every single day. Now, this would have never, ever happened 10 years ago. Never happened. Even 5 years ago, it was almost unthinkable that a correspondent would dare open their mouth about UFOs in a White House press conference. So we are getting this information out, and it's gradually filtering out. And some of these journalists that are taking up the gauntlet, the fellow who brought up the entire issue, his name was Oliviera Knox, and a pretty dogged White House chief correspondent, and he did ask the question. And on top of that, a lady named April Ryan, who was in the audience also as a press correspondent, she pressed Josh even more and said essentially, Mr. Ernest, you're not giving us the right information, not giving us what we hear, and we want to know more. We need to know more. And she kept on pressing this man, and he had to back off and just say, ignore the question. As I'm concerned, the president doesn't have any views on these things, and he basically shut her down. So what we're seeing is this kind of stuff is getting closer and closer to the cloth all of the time as part of this process. And John Podesta, as you mentioned earlier in your earlier comments, is one of the people who's pushing this issue just a little bit further each time he opens his mouth. And there have been 12 media outlets to cover what John Podesta has said and what Hillary Clinton has said. Once again, this is unprecedented. We have a situation where we're getting closer and closer all the time. So, excuse me, I think that it's eventually just a matter of time before someone asks the question of the prime minister. It's eventually going to get to that point because, as I said, it's part of this whole movement towards openness. And no longer will the government be able to hide behind the silence. They've really practiced this silence very, very well. It's not something they want to talk about. They just keep their mouth shut. They don't do any. They don't say yes or no about it. They sort of hedge their bets through silence. So I think eventually these kinds of questions are going to be asked. And one of the reasons why I'm holding this inquiry, the first Canadian national inquiry into UFOs, is exactly for that reason, David, is to get this onto the floor of the House of Commons in open debate so that people in opposition and even the government themselves can at least utter the term UFO or whatever they want to call them. That will begin the dialogue, that will begin the discourse, and we will have, in one way or another, put a little bit of a dent or a crack in the so-called glass ceiling. So I'm looking at it as a process, and we're getting closer and closer all the time because, take a presidential candidate like Hillary Clinton saying that she's going to get to the bottom of this issue by opening up some of the... Whether she does or not is, as far as I'm concerned, David, is immaterial. The fact of the matter that she's actually mentioned this whole topic at all on Jimmy Kimmel, in a number of different newspapers in the United States. The Washington Post covered this. The New York Times has covered this. I don't know if you've read the article by her name is Amy Kozik. She wrote a wonderful article in the New York Times about why Hillary Clinton is talking about UFO disclosure. I mean, it's getting to the point now where some of these are waking up. And once again, I'll repeat myself and say this is unprecedented. So we're pushing the envelope just a little bit further each time. And eventually, the process will come to some sort of fruition where there is going to be a public statement either made by the White House or by a major newspaper. And what we're going to be getting into, what Stanton Friedman calls, is a cosmic Watergate. And we're going to be asking the question of why the government has hidden these files for so many years, and now it's time to talk about it and get the egg off your face and start to allow us to understand what you know about this issue. Now, many people feel that, the government has lied to us before about this whole issue, and even if they do start talking about it now, there's going to be more lies, more obfuscation, and more misdirection. I don't doubt that for a second. We're never going to get the full understanding of all of this until we really kind of experience the extraterrestrial issue for ourselves in terms of contact. And I don't think, as far as I'm concerned, that the extraterrestrial factor in this whole thing, the people from the star, our visitors, they're not interested in government contact. That's my opinion. I really don't think that they are the true entities who are the beings that we know are out there, who have a different perception of reality, a different understanding of what the cosmos is all about. They don't give a darn about the White House or the President of the United States. They've got bigger fish to fry. I mean, these people are involved in galactic movement, in galactic enterprises of enlightening people. So as far as I'm concerned, is a very, very small player in all of this when you get right down to what this means galactically in terms of our existence as a species. So we have yet to become enlightened about this, not because the government knows what's going on. We don't need the government to lie to us more. What we need to do is allow more open discourse about this so that eventually we as a species will understand what's really going on, and in turn, wherever these ETs are, be they benevolent or whatever they are, will come to an understanding that we as a species are on the brink of understanding what this stuff might be about, and that we might become ready to enter into a dialogue with them directly, not governments necessarily. They will become involved with us, with other people of the planet, with the contactees. That's where this is really going to happen on a consciousness level. So we are only petitioning the government to have this done because the media is one of the conduits that's going to allow this stuff to happen. And I've said this before on radio. In some ways, the media is our worst enemy. And in other ways, the media is our best friend. It's the only way this information is going to get out in terms of public notoriety. So we have to play things very kind of close to the vest in terms of not alienating the media, to push them aside and say, well, really, that's not your job. It is their job to let us know what's going on, or at least challenge the government to make some sort of expository statements that, in fact, we are not alone, and these things have been coming and going with impunity for hundreds, if not thousands of years. So it's a very difficult set of balances that's happening here. It's a multifaceted situation, and we have to handle it in a way that will allow the people to eventually, and when I talk about the people, I'm talking about we as a species, to come to an understanding of what's really going on, and not necessarily depend on the government to tell us what's going on. Because we can't go cap in hand to the government saying, oh, would you please tell us what you know? That in a way is kind of a fallacious argument, but we can challenge them to open the dialogue, because as Steve Bassett told me years ago, constitutionally, governments have always been allowed to keep secrets. That's a given, but they've never been given the right to lie to us. That's the key issue here. The government has been lying, bald-faced lying to us about the ET presence, and it's time for that to end. And sweep that silence and that secrecy away so that we can get involved in some sort of rational, mature dialogue about what's really going on. Now, if we can talk about, the deforestation, if we can talk about the environment, if we can talk about, genetically modified foods, we can talk about, big pharma and the pharmaceutical industries, or this whole idea of the Panama Papers in terms of the offshore money that's been dumped offshore. If we could talk about those kinds of things, we can talk about the extraterrestrial issue. So it can be part of the dialogue that we have to open up. So in terms of what Hillary Clinton is doing, she's opening the door for us. Podesta is opening the door for us to allow this to become something that we can talk about in a rational, mature way.
Victor, one of the things that I'm disappointed about with the media is the fact that as someone who spent 10 years in mainstream like I did, the way the media dropped the ball when John Podesta first came out about this back on February 13th, 2015, with a simple tweet that said his biggest regret of 2014 was not securing the hashtag disclosure of the UFO files.
Right.
And then he hashtagged the truth is still out there. When you have the president's right-hand man coming out and saying this, that he's leaving Obama to go over to Hillary to help her win the nomination, and the New York Times doesn't pick it up. NBC, CNN, Chicago Tribune, doesn't matter which major media outlet, they dropped the ball. And now the media in the mainstream is trying to play catch-up because all of a sudden these funny UFO stories aren't going away.
Right.
I find that so disappointing by the media in the United States that happened, that it really makes you wonder if the president's right-hand man isn't being shut up by the mystery government that seems to control all of this, then there has to be something more to it. Are you surprised that John Podesta has been able, in his position, to get away with as much UFO talk as he had?
That's another really good question. Yes and no. There's two sides of that. I'm surprised that he's done what he's done in the way that he has done it. And I think he's going to be very, very instrumental in moving this thing forward. Because, as with Hillary, when I said that Hillary has opened the door, and in fact it's been John Podesta who's been instrumental in doing that. And you have to remember that Podesta was the chief of staff under Bill Clinton while all of the Rockefeller letters were going back and forth between Lawrence S. Rockefeller and Dr. Jack Gibbons, the science advisor to the president. Grant Cameron was the one who uncovered all of those letters, called the Rockefeller Initiative by him. So Podesta was in the White House while this was going on between 1993 and 1996. So he saw firsthand, way back when, that this was all happening. And then when he left the position of chair of chief of staff in the White House, I think he made a conscious decision when he teamed up with Leslie Kean with the Coalition for Freedom of Information, and those two worked very, very hard together to platform upon which they could build some sort of public notoriety for this issue. And that's when he came forward at the Washington Press Club, I think it was in 2002 in October, where he said that it's time for the U.S. government to address the facts that remain in the dark about the UFO phenomenon. That's the first thing that he said. And then he also wrote the foreword to Leslie Kean's book, UFOs, Generals, and Pilots Go on Record. And that went to number 29 on the New York Times bestseller list. But once again, as you said, the media dropped the ball. They didn't pick it up back then either. So I think it's a repeating series of it's like fishing, It's like fishing. I'm not a fisherman, but my uncle used to be, and he said, Victor, you just throw your line in the water and you wait for a bite. And you sit there, and you sit there, and you sit there. Sometimes you sit there for hours and nothing happens, or the next time you throw it in, you get a bite right away. That's what's happening here. We're getting little nibbles at the bait that he's throwing out. And eventually, all we need, Dave, is a curious, very, very courageous journalist, or something like the New York Times or the Washington Post, saying in their back rooms, and in the dark back room of the publishers and the owners of the newspaper, they're sitting there, and I'm almost positive right now that's what's going on, that they are sitting there talking about whether or not they want to bite this and take this whole thing down and say, look, we either come clean on this or we shut up completely. They're really on a knife-edged sword here. And if you read some of the articles as a result of what Clinton has said and what Podesta has said, particularly the one by Amy Shostak in the New York Times, she bit this issue. The New York Times they grabbed a piece of this information metaphorically and put it out there. And eventually, these publishers and the ownership within big media in the States will eventually do it. It's part of the process that I mentioned earlier. It will happen, and we're getting closer and closer and closer, but it's very frustrating to have these little small nibbles and then nothing happen. So they may have dropped the ball in a certain way, but I think that they are still carrying it, and they are still moving it forward towards the goal line, but they're just hesitant to cross that goal line and maybe tick off a whole lot of people. And there was reason why the Washington Post did what it did in the Watergate era. There's a reason why they did it, and they have to find a similar reason to do this now. In a very, very similar kind of way. And I think that's the kind of knife-edged swords that we're sitting on. So, really, they're carrying the ball to a certain degree, and they're covering this information, but my barometer will be 60 minutes. Once Hillary Clinton or John Podesta are interviewed on 60 Minutes, that's disclosure right there. It will happen. That's my personal barometer. Okay, it can happen someplace else. It may happen in Canada. We may get some coverage because of the hearings. We're trying to move things forward that way. But in terms of media, being our worst enemy and our best friend, right now they're the cloak and dagger worst enemy. But eventually they're going to wake up, smell the roses, and realize that it's in their best interest to bring this thing forward, despite the amount of pressure that's being put on them not to say anything. And I can guarantee you there's huge pressure on CBS, NBC, and ABC not to say anything in a really, really meaningful way about this issue. It's been covered. CBS has covered it. CBS Las Vegas was the one who interviewed John Podesta. And had a great interview with him. CNN had a tremendous interview with John Podesta right on television. It's on the web. So they're inching towards it, but they still won't go the whole route. Why? That's the big question.
Victor, what is Canada's role in disclosure, if we have a role at all?
Great question. I think and this is where I kind of step up to the idea that the way the Canadian media works, David, is a whole lot less constricted or controlled as to compared to how the American media is controlled. The American media is controlled by different agencies. I don't know if your listeners are familiar with Project Mockingbird. That was a project that was put in place by the CIA to make sure that all of this stuff, talk about it at your leisure, make fun of it, ridicule it, but at no time will we really tell the full story. And that was the purpose of Project Mockingbird, not to have any complete open discourse about this. You conduct your information, have your local radio stations cover these funny lights in the sky. That's fine, but the government will not make any pronouncement about this. And the CIA made sure that this happened. Nothing like that has happened in Canada. And I think the Canadian media is a lot more what I call amorphous. They're a lot more naive in a lot of ways than the American media. So my understanding is that the Canadian media has the best chance of becoming partners with us. And I've spoken to people at CTV about this, okay? Becoming partners with us in disclosing this event. And there are people within the Canadian media who do want to follow this issue, but they're not willing to, similar kind of rhetoric that we got involved in, they're not really willing to take the ball across the goal line just yet. For whatever reason, I'm not sure. Maybe it's the same reason of constriction that we mentioned about the CIA. Maybe it's the same sort of thing. But my sense is that if something really concrete comes out about this whole UFO ET issue, that the Canadian media will jump all over it, as they did with Paul Hellyer. Now, Paul Hellyer, as far as I'm concerned, that event that we had at the University of Toronto in 2005, the symposium that we had where we got Paul Hellyer to come forward, that was one of the most well-covered events in Canadian history. And Paul continues to be a vanguard of disclosure with respect to his notoriety. And he still retains that sort of magical kind of bullet that he has in terms of his being the oldest serving cabinet member who believes and who's articulated anything about the UFO issue. So we still have the opportunity to use and to how can I put it? Allow Mr. Hellyer to be a spokesman for the Canadian government without being necessarily part of the government, if you know what I'm trying to get at. He's the longest serving member of the Privy Council. So he's got that kind of gravitas to him. And I think once the Canadian media really understands where Paul Hellyer stands on this issue and how public he has been and will continue to be about this, they just might pick up the gauntlet and it become a whole discussion point up here in Canada, eventually making its way, as he spoke about earlier, onto the House of Commons, where people are asking questions about it. What's it all about? What's going on? So Go ahead.
Sorry, Victor, because we're running short on time here before we go to break. The problem that we have with Paul Hellyer is the fact that the government has time. Paul doesn't. At 92 years old, it could be any time before he gets his calling to the next lifetime.
That's right.
And the problem that we have here is nobody in their 30s, 40s, 50s, or even 60s right now who is in Parliament or has been in Parliament is willing to step up to the plate. And that's the problem.
That's the problem. No, you're exactly right, Dave. I don't disagree with you at all. And I think part of what we're trying to do with this hearing is attempting to get someone like that. I mean, we've written to members of Parliament in Brantford, my own member of Parliament here. We've corresponded with members of Parliament, made them aware of the hearing. They know about this hearing. So it's part of that process that we spoke about earlier. And just maybe we might get our man or woman to step up to the plate and be the person to ask the Prime Minister the question about his understanding of what these UFOs are all about.
We are with Victor Viggiani tonight on Spaced Out Radio. He is one of the speakers and one of the founders of the Alien Cosmic Expo. That will be taking place June 24th to 26th in Brantford, Ontario. If you've heard the name Brantford before and you're a hockey fan, it's because it's the home of the legendary Wayne Gretzky. Good place to have a UFO conference as well. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott. We'll be back after this break.
Have you ever had an extraterrestrial experience? One you just couldn't explain? Well, maybe I can help. Hello, I am Samantha Mullet. On the second Tuesday of each month, I will join Dave Scott on Spaced Out Radio to bring a human aspect to ET contact. It's something I've lived with my entire life, and I'd love to help you understand. Let's share our experiences. The ET Experience, the second Tuesday of each month, only on Spaced Out Radio.
Fairies? Bigfoot? Dogmen? Trolls? Goblins? Hey, if it's cryptid in any way, I'm looking into it. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, also known as Spaced Out Radio's Crypto Guru. Join me every second Wednesday of the month on Spaced Out Radio with Dave Scott, where we will talk about the stories people call tall tales. I will fill you in on the latest sightings and the hidden histories that are causing quite a stir. You can find everything at spacedoutradio.com.
Hi there, this is Jolene with Rivulet Reiki and Readings, and I want you to relax. Let me help you chill out and get in touch with your body, mind, and soul. In this busy world, sometimes we need to let go, and this is where I can help. Visit my website, rivuletrndr.wix.com/rivuletrndr, or my Facebook page, Rivulet R&R, to set up an appointment for relaxation, Reiki, or readings. No matter where you are, it's time for you to make time for you.
Would you like to expand your clientele? Have you ever thought of online radio advertising? Check out spacedoutradio.com to get your name out there. Our listeners support those who advertise with us, so why not give it a try? We have the most competitive advertising prices out there. Just click on the advertising tab on spacedoutradio.com and contact us today.
Are you an ET experiencer, but you just don't know what's going on? Are you too timid or shy to discuss it with anyone? Maybe I can help. Join me, R. Keith Andrews, the first Friday of every month on Spaced Out Radio, and I will help you to find the answers you're looking for. Together, I will help you understand the off-worlders and the true meanings behind your experiences. All you have to do is join us in the Spaced Out Radio chat room. See you there.
Every Saturday and Sunday night, as Dave Scott wanders aimlessly in the wilderness, you can come hang out with me, James Tyson, in Spaced Out Weekend. Starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, I'll take you along as we talk with some of the best experts in their fields. SpacedOutRadio.com is the place to find us. So sit down, relax, put your feet up. Enjoy the topics like the paranormal, supernatural, intuitiveness, and so much more. Hope to see you there.
Hi there, this is your psychic medium Joanna, and I would love it if you would join us every other Sunday on Spaced Out Weekend. With host James Tyson, we'll bring you personal psychic messages on two mediums and a large. Questions about love, life, career changes. We would love it if you would come and join us live. Call in and listen in for the experience. Allow us to open the doors to your other side. Two mediums and a large, heard only on Spaced Out Weekend at spacedoutradio.com.
Would you like to become one of our space travelers? All you have to do is click on the Space Travelers icon at spacedoutradio.com. For only $5 a month, you can get access to some great prizes, as well as private monthly shows, newsletters, and a members-only section on our website. Become a space traveler today.
Do you have a topic or a guest that you'd like to hear on Spaced Out Radio? Let us know at spacedoutradio.com, where you can sign up to become a Space Traveler member today. Or you can find us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio and on our Facebook page, Spaced Out Radio Show.
I don't want to take a thing from you, I just want to feel like something real with you.
Welcome back to Space Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you're listening in on the Space Out Radio Network on Twitter, if you're listening in on Facebook at Euphoria Chronicles, as well as the SOR Space Travelers, if you're on the SHR Media Network, Paranormal Forum, or the Spreaker chat room here on Spaced Out Radio's show, we appreciate you tuning in. Remember, you can follow us on social media at Spaced Out Radio on Twitter. On Facebook, give our page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, Dave Scott, SOR. On YouTube, where we hide our archives, subscribe to our channel, Spaced Out Radio Show, and our website, which is being revamped for the space travelers, should be ready to go in about 2 weeks, is spacedoutradio.com. Tomorrow night on the show, we get back into the alien side of things. Keith Andrews will join us as the Alien Connection continues tomorrow night. Tonight we are talking with Victor Viggiani. He is part of the Alien Cosmic Expo that'll be taking place later this month, June 24th to 26th. Spaced Out Radio is involved by having a bunch of the speakers come on this month to talk about experiences, UFOs, and the main topic, disclosure. Victor, thank you so much for being with us.
Once again, it's a pleasure to be with you.
I got a few questions that I want to ask from our audience here. And I'm going to start off with Chris. He actually made this comment about 22 minutes ago. And I think this question is probably more best suited for Grant Cameron. But he says, of all the presidents of the USA, I wonder which ones have had the most knowledge and which ones the least about the UFO alien subject matter.
Well, that is a question for Grant for sure. With Grant on that, probably Truman would be probably the first one that he would mention as having, if a lot of knowledge, at least some sort of understanding that the crash happened, and that cabinet. He's actually on record as saying, yes, we've talked about this in cabinet all the time. He has said that. He is on record as physically saying, yes, we talk about that in cabinet all the time. So I would imagine that Truman would probably be someone who would have a lot of inside information, especially because back then the secrecy wasn't today. It wasn't as I don't know, as dangerous as it is now. They just didn't know what they were dealing with back then. They had no idea what they were dealing with. They were just as confused as everybody else. So once they did, that's when the sort of the clamps came down on the whole thing. After that, other presidents that come to mind would be Ronald Reagan. I think that Ronald Reagan had some some really good ideas about what was going on, because I know he had a sighting while he was on an aircraft himself. I think also Jimmy Carter is one who has had a direct experience with it. First of all, with his own sighting, and second of all, just before he actually took office, just after he was elected president in November. Before that, he went to the CIA director at the time, who was George Bush Sr., and at the time, Carter actually asked Bush, "I want the UFO file. I want the information that you have on." And he was told by George Bush Sr. that, "Mr. President, you don't have top clearance to get to these files." He was told that by the CIA director. So you've got a situation where the most powerful man on the planet doesn't have clearance to file. So that he's another one that I think has had some inside information. Bill Clinton, for sure, is another person who was sort of knocking on the door. He wanted to find out what's really going on with the issue. The Rockefeller files really prove that he had a deep interest in this stuff, but for some reason did not act upon it. And what the story is there, and this is in a book by Webster Hubbell, The People in High Places. Hubbell was a very close friend of, and I say this because presidents are treated in a certain way, but what happened with this situation was Webb Hubbell was brought into the office. A very friend of President Clinton said, Clinton said to him, "Mr. Hub, I'm going to assign you to the Justice Department. And I'm really curious about a couple of things. I want you to find out two things. I want you to find out who killed Jack Kennedy and what this UFO issue is all about." And Webster Hubbell went to the Justice Department. I think he spent 18 months there. I'm not sure exactly the tenure of his stay. But after his stay finished, he came back to the president and said, reported back to the president. He said, "Mr. President, if you do find out what this UFO issue is all about, you will land up like Jack Kennedy." So I guess that said, kind of set the stage for Mr. Clinton to shut his mouth or not be as active as he might have wanted to be in terms of that. So I think presidents know about this information. And the discussion that I've had with several people is that once these people are elected president, the Barack Obamas of the world and ostensibly the Hillary Clintons and all the presidents down, throughout history, what happens is they're elected, and these people come and go. They're elected for 4 to 8 years, whatever their stay is. But there are people who are in power in Washington, and I'm talking about big power. And as you mentioned earlier, the alphabet organizations or the Pentagon. The president, at a certain point, is sat down and is in front of these people who really run the government, the people who are there all the time. The civil servants, so to speak. The president is sat down by these people and said, "Mr. President, here's how things work around here. And here's what you can say, and here's what you can't say." And we're pretty certain that that's the way things work. They're not allowed to talk about certain things, and it's going to take a very brave person to break that mold, if in fact they do. So the position of president is really not as effective as a conduit as for disclosure as we think it might be. However, Barack Obama is proving to be one of the people who appears to be allowing this information to kind of dribble out. So over history, in answer to the person's question again, presidents have always known about this, but they've been restricted in their capacity to really come forward and talk about it because of national security. That's the guise that they use. They can't talk about it because umbrella of so-called national security, which I think is a load of horse pucky as far as I'm concerned. National security has nothing to do with this issue at all. It's just the way the government uses that excuse not to talk about it.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it still baffles me as you say that there are things that the President of the United States does not have security clearance for. That blows me away every time I hear that. It just doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't compute.
It's not rational. You're right. It's not a rational point of view.
But then you hear John Podesta once again. It always comes back to Podesta. How in the hell is he allowed to say the things that he is? Because we see so many lesser knowns who have been killed, who have been absolutely thwarted with pornography, child pornography on their computers. We've seen a lot of people absolutely crushed at the hands of the government reputation-wise, and yet here's John Podesta, who is becoming one of the biggest mouths of them all on this subject, and he's not being told to shut up. Right.
I think it's a great point that you're making, and I think the reason that it's happening, once again, just my opinion, I've been involved in this for 40 years, so I have some very, very firm opinions on what's going on. My sense is, David, that if the government has a handle on this situation, which I think they do, they know what's going on. I'm quite open to the idea that the government, when I say the government, I don't mean the elected officials, but the establishment within the government, fully recognizes that there's no way that they can keep critical mass of information under wraps forever. And the current situation with Hillary Clinton and John Podesta is a very good indication of that. So they realize that, listen, we can't really control this whole thing the way we used to, because the media is becoming a little more savvy about this, although they're not doing their job completely. Some of the spokespeople are becoming more open about this, but not completely. Documents are coming out and telling the story, but not completely. There's no full story on this whole thing yet. And that's sort of a part of a plan. And I think there may be, in fact, David, a concerted plan to desensitize media and the general public for some sort of awareness campaign that will indeed allow us to begin the discourse about off-world civilizations. And I think Richard Dolan's book, AD, After Disclosure, People's Guide to Disclosure, it gives a great indication to us, if you've read that book, as to how this whole thing might happen. Desensitizing the public and gradually leaking this information out to a point where, there's a little bit of this and a little bit of that and a little bit of, kind of like a real soft sell on this whole thing. And I think that's where we're headed in terms of what I call, small d disclosure. That's where it's going to happen, because the government will never tell everything that they have in their files. That's just not going to happen. But all we have to do, and this is all that I'm involved in, is have the government acknowledge that this is a real phenomenon. I don't care about the files. I really don't. I don't care about what the president thinks. All I want them to do, and myself and Steve Bassett and Nick Pope and Grant Cameron and Stan, all the people that were having at the hearing, all we want is for the government to acknowledge this exists. We'll take it from there. Just acknowledge this stuff is real, and then shut up. We don't care what you know. We will eventually find out the truth. Acknowledge this is real, and we'll take over from there, because we have the capacity to tell the planet what this is all about without it being lied to by a government. We don't need any more lies. So that's the key issue here, is if the government acknowledges that the ET presence is real, that's all we need. We don't need any more than that. And so in terms of what Podesta is doing, he's allowing that to happen, that they will eventually acknowledge that there is some sort of off-world existence that may be real. And they can couch it in whatever terms they want. But as soon as they say that, cat will be out of the bag, and then we can take over and do whatever we want in terms of how this thing goes, and just wait for the extraterrestrials to realize that we're now mature enough to talk about this as a society. And that's where this real disclosure is going to happen. When we, as a social society, as a social entity, as a civilization, begin to talk about this as a real entity among ourselves, we don't need the government to take over and do whatever they might do with this issue, because the ETs are really in control and not the government. So with respect to John Podesta, he's a tool. He's a conduit through which this information is becoming more and more palatable, more sellable, more open. And he's sort of, I think he's being used in a way to bring people to the notion that something really is going on. And I think that's his key role.
Galen has a question in the SOR Space Travelers for you. There are so many scientists that have disappeared or were murdered over the years. Victor, do you not think that it is still happening now, or do you really believe somebody will release the info and live to tell about it?
Well, first I've got to say that this whole idea of people being put away because of what they know or what they might know. I fully realize that may be a tactic of some people within the so-called government. We've got some information that's the way they handle some individuals. Whether scientists have been put away because of what they know or what they might say, I really don't know. It's part of an area of speculation, David, that I really don't indulge in a whole lot. I think when we really get down to what's going on, eventually we are going to we'll find out some of the really dastardly things that governments collectively have done in order to keep this stuff hidden. And it would not surprise me one bit if murder, suicides or whatever are part of their plan. It may have been part of their plan. And so I guess my answer to the question is I'm not surprised. I would not be surprised if that is in fact would be true. But I really don't have the information to prove that that's one of the government tactics. I really don't. And you know what? I don't dwell on that because it really doesn't really advance the cause of trying to open this whole issue up. And that's part of the whole problem with this issue, David, is that there's so many tentacles to this issue. So many different tentacles. The one that we just talked about in terms of putting scientists away, and whether there's benevolent or benign, or aggressive ETs. We'll find out eventually. Once we become the essence of this issue is once we become a species that whoever these ETs are, once they recognize us as a mature species that can handle part of this whole membership in this galactic association, whatever it might be. Once they sense that, that's when their contact will occur. That it's already occurring with our experiencers. We know that. That's the conduit through which they're making themselves known in a very, very real, sincere, and obvious way. But the fact of the matter is, with government, as soon as you get into the government angle on this, then you become involved in all these conspiracy theories. What they do in order to keep this information quiet and all of that. If you engage yourself in that kind of talk all the time, it leads you nowhere. All it does is frustrate you. What we have to do is take a positive approach to attempting to cooperate, or at least ask for government cooperation and say, listen, we know what's going on. So, just stop ragging the puck. This all we want is the truth, and let's be mature about this. If there's a reason, if there's a really reason why we shouldn't know about this, tell us, and then we'll shut up. And you know what? We should not dispense with that possibility. There may, in fact, be, Dave, a good reason why we should not know about this. I mean, I don't agree with that position. There may be. Maybe there are. That the television program was a Stargate. With that whole operation trying to fend off these bad aliens from coming here and having us for breakfast and all that. That may be happening, and we just don't know about it. Maybe there is a galactic war going on that Earth is just part of the whole scenario to be conquered. And that we are, the alien races are helping to protect us. That may be happening. I'm convinced that anything is possible. And once we find out what's really going on, I remain convinced that it will be totally different than what we think it really is. I'm convinced of that. And I'm prepared for the biggest shock of my life when disclosure happens, if I'm still around when it does. And my response will be, holy Lord, I had no idea that was a possibility. And it's what I call, David, the thought that's never been thought before.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely.
It's a possibility. You know what I'm saying? It's just we don't have the capacity to fathom what the consequences might be of contact. And so, I mean, I'm open on all possibilities. So, I guess in answer to the question, the more you get involved with this kind of, what the government is doing and the conspiracies and all of that, the more you're chasing your tail. And that's part of the government design, to keep us occupied and chasing our tail about this whole issue. Well, fine, let them talk about all that other, shit for a lack. Don't want to use that word on air, but I did. But that let them talk about all that other stuff.
Exactly.
As long as they're talking about that other stuff, then the real stuff is not really going to come out, and that's okay. And that's part of the reason why we're doing. We want to be authentic with our government. They are our representatives. They are our servants. Now, that's, most people say, well, my goodness, Victor, you're not that naive to say the government or these people that have been our servants. Well, yes, they are. And the problem is our elected representatives, the people that we put in the chairs in Parliament, they are our representatives. And they have every right to know about what's going on. And they, to this day, remain ignorant about the fact of what's really going on behind the scenes. So as soon as we get our elected representatives plugged into this and saying, how long has this been going on? Do you mean to say that there's information about our jets chasing these things? Well, yes, there is. Do you mean there's information about back engineering? Well, yes, there is. I mean, the litany will go on. And these people will be astounded by what we know. And that's why people like you and I are important, because when the time comes, we will inform our elected representatives about this, and they could become the voice of open disclosure. And that's why we're working towards having government be part of this collaborative effort about people informing them, the elected representatives. Never mind the intelligence agencies, who are in charge of hiding this information. Once the elected representatives get a hold of this issue and they realize that they've been taken, that they've been lied to themselves. Not only have the people been lied to, but our elected representatives have been lied to by the alphabet agencies that you alluded to earlier. So we're dealing with this maelstrom of anger, if this ever does come to fruition, that our elected representatives realize that they too have been lied to. So that's another facet of this, and that's why this hearing is taking place, so that we can get this information out, get our elected representatives and the media to say, how long has this been going on? Why didn't we know about this? Why did we not take it seriously? And then we can fully explain to them what the whole process is and what's going on. And if you want to sit down and talk about this, hey, listen, we're open to that. We'll meet with you, we'll talk with you, we'll give you all the information we have, and then you can take this to the bank and do whatever you need to do with this. Make it the third rail of politics in Canada. Never mind making this a conservative or liberal issue. This is a people's issue, because when you come right down to it, David, this whole issue boils down to one simple fact, okay? One simple fact, that we as a species are on the threshold of our next step in evolution. That's what it all boils down to.
Absolutely. And you know what? The other part to that, Victor, is the fact that if the politicians are supposed to be the voice of the people are supposed to be able to have the answers. There's supposed to be no secrets.
That's right, exactly.
I want to sneak in one question here, because this can go in so many different ways, and we got about 4 minutes before we got to go to break here. And just so you know, audience, Victor will be with us for the final hour as well tonight, so we thank Victor for that. Roz in Paranormal Forum is asking, Victor, do you believe that someone like Tom DeLonge, who is very, very much pressing the button on the media side with UFO disclosure, do you believe he is part of the disclosure project, or do you believe he is part of the disinformation?
Oh, boy, it's a... My simple answer is I don't know. I think Tom's work is important, and whether he's part of, or whether the information, whether he is, whether his information is part of a sort of an obfuscation or a misdirection or disinformation, or whether it's authentic, it in a way it doesn't matter. The fact of the matter is, it's coming forward. And once you listen to anyone, the position that he has taken on this whole thing, once you listen to that information, rational people have to make a decision, have to make a choice about the quality of the information. Okay, and it's like Hillary Clinton saying, "I'm going to come forward and I'm going to ask for all the file." Fine. I mean, she can say that, and she may get them or she may not. But the important issue is that she's raising the issue. Okay, that's the important part of what's happening here. It's not the fact that she will or will not be able to open the files and get them out. It's the fact that she's raising the issue. So I think the work that DeLong is doing the issue is being raised. Now, the quality of the information, the authenticity of information is another question altogether. It's all part of what I call converging lines of evidence. No one piece of information is more important than any other. It's like a bunch of pieces of a puzzle in a box. Like a huge puzzle. A complex puzzle, but there's no picture on the box.
For sure.
You see do you get the image there?
Absolutely.
We don't. Yeah, I mean, we have nothing to compare it to. So if you get all the pieces of the puzzle together, and you don't have some sort of picture as to what it might look like once you assemble all the pieces of the puzzle, you really don't know where you're going. That's where we're at. We've got all these pieces of these puzzles, or the puzzle, and we're being asked to put this together without any kind of reference point, and that's not good. That's not good a situation for society to be in, and that's a result of the secrecy and the lies that we've been told by agents, that are not elected representatives, agents within the government. So that we have to deal with the angle and with the concept of secrecy and silence, and get that out of the way. Once we get the secrecy and silence out of the way and open the discourse, we'll at least have some sort of, picture on the box to compare our information with. Say, okay, fine, this piece goes here, this piece goes there, and this piece. This is what it might look like. I mean, that's the way good rational thinking happens. And that's the way good teaching and learning happens. That's the way species advance. That's the way species learn. They do it in a rational, authentic way. And if there's any one issue that has become totally chaotic and unauthentic, it's this issue. It's a total, complete mess that we're being asked to understand. And then you've got all these other people that are putting in information, disinformation, and muddying the waters. It's like, I alluded to the pieces of the puzzle. It's like they're dumping pieces of the puzzle that are irrelevant, and they're just not part of the whole picture. So we have to decide which pieces to keep and which pieces to discard, and that's a very difficult process in a very complex world that we live in. So we're on this. We're really kind of groping in the dark in a lot of ways. We know where we're going, but we just don't have the next handle to grab onto. And it's a very difficult process. So, in terms of that individual's work, I don't know where to put it, but the fact of the matter is that he's raising the issue, and we just have to decide how authentic his information is.
We are talking with Victor Viggiani tonight on Spaced Out Radio. We're going to hop out for a break to get into the final hour of this show. When we come back, Victor is going to be with us. We're going to get to more of your questions. We're going to get to Eisenhower and some NORAD documents that we have to hear about from Victor Viggiani. Zland Communications.blogspot.com is his website. You can check it out today. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott. We'll be right back.
Become more intimate and interactive with Spaced Out Radio. Join our Space Travelers Club with your new membership. For $5 a month, we'll provide you with special access to the website, monthly prize draws from books to psychic readings, along with monthly newsletter, private interviews, and more. Sign up today to be part of Spaced Out Radio's experience.
Every month on Spaced Out Radio, we look into the deep and dark reports of cryptids roaming around the world with me, Rob Morphy, from Cryptopia.us. I would love it if you would join me and host Dave Scott as we delve into the most arcane stories and reports regarding creatures of the unknown. My job is to hunt down the details and bring the evidence forward to you. These aren't your regular Bigfoot stories I'm talking about either. You can find out more about crypto history at spacedoutradio.com.
Looking for a place to advertise at a very reasonable cost? Look no further than Spaced Out Radio. SpacedOutRadio.com has an advertising tab that you can click to check out our daily, weekly and monthly packages to play on the radio, or our website including social media. From commercial spots to banners, we have it all. Check out our competitive pricing today.
You hear footsteps in the empty room above you. A rocking chair begins rocking by itself. Don't be afraid of the things that go bump in the night. Reach for Spirit Storybox, the iPhone app the Huffington Post UK called the only ghost hunting app you will ever need. Spirit Storybox. The spirits are telling their stories. Are you listening?
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
Is the 24-hour world starting to wear you down? Let me from Rivulet Reiki and Ratings lend you a hand. Hi, this is Jolene, and if you're in need of Reiki or a realm reading, come to my website, rivuletrr.wix.com/rivuletrr&r, and let us help you out. At Rivulet, I specialize in healing your body, mind, and soul, no matter where you are. And be sure to check out the Rivulet R&R Facebook page for your best deals. Remember, it's time for you to make some time for you.
Find yourself constantly looking up in the sky, looking for answers? Have you had extraterrestrial contact? Are you an abductee? Looking for answers to your experiences? Hi there, I'm R. Keith Andrews, Spaced Out Radio's resident ET expert. Join me live the first Friday of every month where I take questions from the Spaced Out Radio chat room and help you understand those from the far-off world. It's 2 hours of knowledge every experiencer should listen to. Hope to see you there.
Did you know that Spaced Out Radio runs 7 days a week? Hi, it's James Tyson from Spaced Out Weekend. Every Saturday and Sunday night, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, you can join me and my guests for some great chatter about what's going on out in the universe, or even in that dark part of the basement you really don't want to go back into. Well, let's find the answers to your experiences together. So come on up to Uncle Jimbo's cabin on the weekend. For more information, look us up at spacedoutradio.com.
Would you like to connect with us on Spaced Out Radio? Head to spacedoutradio.com to check out the latest shows, guests, and sponsors. And don't forget to sign up for the Space Travelers Club. You'll find all you need at spacedoutradio.com. Welcome back to Spaced Out Radio tonight. Thank you so much if you're tuning in and the SHR Media Network, on Paranormal Forum, on Spreaker, in the Space Out Radio chat room, and on UFO Chronicles on Facebook, as well as our flagship chat room, the SOR Space Travelers. Thank you for joining us tonight. Tomorrow night on the show, we are back in the ET realm. Our Keith Andrews joins us for the Alien Connection. That is tomorrow night. If you want to follow us on Twitter, you can do so at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, I can be followed at Dave Scott, SOR. Our YouTube channel is Spaced Out Radio Show, and our website is spacedoutradio.com. Space Travelers, it will be good to go in probably 2 weeks' time. We are efforting a new look to the website. Tonight we are talking with Victor Viggiani from Zland Communications, his website, zlandcommunications.blogspot.com. We are talking disclosure. We are talking evidence that it may be already happening. Welcome back, Victor, and thank you for coming on for the final hour. A big 3 hours tonight. That's a good one.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I hope people are enjoying it as I am.
Oh, we are fired right up. Everybody's still blasting away here in the Space Travelers chat room and Paranormal Forum, as well as on the other chat room on Spreaker. It's a good night indeed. I want to ask you, in regards to Eisenhower, the rumor is, whether it's true or not, we'll never know unless it comes out, that in 1953-54, he is in California, disappears. They say the official statement was he had emergency dental surgery, but
Right.
many believe he ended up at Edwards Air Force Base or an Air Force base in California where he met with extraterrestrials. So my question to you in regards to disclosure, do you think that if it does come through, all of a sudden it's going to go back to that Eisenhower deal, which is said to be technology for humans in trade? Because there's so many people who have had negative extraterrestrial experiences with surgeries, with pregnancies disappearing, so on and so forth, that if the government did make that deal for technology, there would be one hell of a major lawsuit that could bankrupt the entire country.
Yeah, it's a really, that whole incident at Muroc Air Force Base at the time has opened it to some severe speculation. I've looked into it too myself. I obtained an entire diary of Eisenhower's presidency, a day-by-day chronicle of what he did. And in looking at the day-to-day, it's just sort of his press secretary writing up what he did. He had a meeting with so-and-so, he played golf with so-and-so on this day at dinner, and he and his wife did this and that. They met with certain officials, and he took this trip. And I went to the day of, I think it was February the 21st, was it 52 or 53, whatever the year was, I'm not sure. But I went to the day that he was supposed to have gone, he was away at his ranch or his vacation spot in California, and there's nothing on that day. There's stuff on every single other day of his presidency, but there's nothing on his calendar from that day. So, what does that mean? Who knows? You can make all kinds of assumptions about what that might mean. But once again, it's one of these situations where when this thing called disclosure does eventually happen, it will clarify all of these different levels of speculation. It'll make them all either true or not true or part of the whole scenario. My sense is that he did visit the base, and he did bring a Catholic bishop with him from Chicago, Bishop McKinley. McKinley was there. The bishop was there. I've actually attempted to get the diary of McKinley, but they won't give it to me. McKinley was on an airplane after he left there. McKinley was on an airplane that had quote-unquote engine trouble and landed. And McKinley was on that airplane when it landed. And McKinley was on that airplane when the FBI came onto the plane and said, Bishop, you are not. The reason that he was on the plane is he was going to go to the Pope Pius XII, and tell him what had happened at Muroc Air Force Base. And the FBI came onto the plane, as the story goes, and said, Cardinal McKinley, you are not going to tell anybody about what you did or saw at Muroc Air Force Base. And essentially, the cardinal said, go to hell, basically, and he did visit Pope Pius XII, and share the information about what happened at Muroc Air Force Base. So that's the scenario. And when I talked earlier about converging lines of evidence, we seem to have information that because there's nothing on Eisenhower's calendar, and because we do have information, and I have direct information from a Catholic priest in New York City, who has been told by a Jesuit priest at Georgetown University that, in fact, Cardinal McKinley was, in fact, there and was, in fact, intended to go to see the Pope at the time and did, in fact, share this information with the Pope. And, it sounds incredible. It sounds almost unbelievable. But my source on this is, as far as I'm concerned, is impeccable. So I tend to believe that something happened at that base. What it was it a deal? Was it just a visit? Was it an exchange of information? Was it a trade-off for technology and the right to abduct our people? I don't know. That could be sort of like an added feature in terms of the disinformation as to what might have happened there. So I really don't know that for a fact, but my sense is that visit, that whole situation did happen. What happened there is open to speculation, and it's just sort of another piece of the puzzle, David, that may or may not be, partially true, all true, or not true at all. I don't think it's not true at all. I think something did happen, and Eisenhower was apprised of the situation in terms of meeting with these races, and it may have extended the cooperation in a certain way. I just don't know. There's no definitive way that I can answer that question, but I know for a fact that a Catholic cardinal was involved in it, and the Vatican, as a result, knows about the issue. Not because of just that one visit. I think the Vatican, which is we need to talk about the Vatican another time. That's a 3-hour show all in itself, David. The Vatican is well apprised of this situation. Well apprised of it.
Well, anytime you want to come on and have that discussion, we can book that very, very easily.
Yeah, it's mind blowing what the Vatican knows about this, and there's stuff going on right now with the Vatican in terms of attempting to, how can I say it, couch the way so that the faithful can understand what's going on. And we know that the SIV, the Servizio Intelligenzia del Vaticano, which is the Vatican's counterpart of the CIA, this Servizio Intelligenzia del Vaticano has been around much, much, much longer than the CIA, and that agency within the Vatican makes the CIA look like a bunch of Boy Scouts. So we know for a fact that the Vatican is well in this issue. Popes know about it. The inner circle within the Vatican are fully aware of what's going on. Father Gabriel Funes, the former director of the Vatican Observatory, knows what's going on. He's made pronouncements about it. He and his assistant, who is now the director, Brother Guy Consumiolo, these are both Jesuits, okay? One is a priest and one is a brother. They know what's going on, and they both made pronouncements about it. Now, these people do not say things that do not have the consent of the papacy. So Gabriel Funes has made specific pronouncements about if extraterrestrials exist, they are part of God's plan. And it's not a matter of focusing on the word if, but the fact of the matter is they know that there are extraterrestrial entities out there and that they are part of this sort of galactic universe and part of just part of creation. And that's the way the Vatican is coaching their knowledge about this. So it's all part of God's plan to have these extraterrestrials in existence. So it's a convoluted kind of thing that we can talk about it at another level. But the fact of the matter is, the Vatican is very, very aware of what's going on. It has been for many, many years.
I want to get to a couple quick questions before we get into learning about these documents involving NORAD. Joe has a question for you. He says, Victor, do you believe that there are alien bases known and sanctioned by the U.S. government?
I've done some reading. I've done some research on that, and there seems to be some sort of, once again, it's all part of whether it's disinformation or not. What I've read about it, that there may be something going on in Antarctica, or it was going on in Antarctica as part of of alien bases, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if there are not bases there, and also some sort of alien bases underwater. There's a lot of information that indicates that when these extraterrestrials come here, they just don't come here to buzz around in the sky. They may have contact points at which they enter our atmosphere and go into these bases wherever they might be. And it wouldn't surprise me one bit if these extraterrestrials have been around as long as we think they have, and I'm not talking about the last 40 or 50, 60 years, I'm talking about for millennium, I mean, these craft have been coming and going for a long, long time, and as I said earlier, they may be part of our development as a species, going way, way back into times in ancient times, and being part of our development, and how man evolved. The humanity evolved the way it did with the intervention at some point in our DNA. So, it wouldn't surprise me at all that if there were, in fact, some sort of stop-off points or places where these craft go to, because we've seen craft come and go out of the water. And so that would not surprise me one little bit. And it's part of this whole after disclosure kind of situation where once disclosure does occur, all of these sort of very gray areas or these areas of speculation will come full circle to become either authentic or just part of the disinformation process. It'll be like a sifting process. The truth will come out, and when the truth comes out, we'll be able to sift through, as Ernest Hemingway said, we'll be able to sift through the crap, because we will be given the opportunity to use what Ernest Hemingway called our crap detectors. He said that every good researcher, writer needs to have a good crap detector to tell the crap from the good stuff. And eventually, when disclosure does come about, we will all have the capacity to tell the difference between the crap and the real stuff. So, if we engage in the talk about all of these things too often, I think it sort of takes our eye off the ball what the real issues really, really are. And the real issue, as I said earlier, is that whatever the situation is, however it turns out, in terms of reality, authenticity, whatever you want to call it, that we are on the next step as a species in our evolution as a species, and that's what this goes down to. It's not about politics, really. It's not about whether the government knows or doesn't know, all of that. When it comes right down to it, when we have contact and when these beings do manifest themselves, they'll have a different story to tell us as to why they're here and what's really going on. And that's something intriguing for me. That's what I wait for. That's beyond the whole government disclosure thing. I wait for the time when we can engage these beings in a meaningful conversation as to who they are and what they mean to us and what they mean to our spirituality and who we are as a species and where we're going and where we can go as a species. We're not bound to this earth. We can become. It is possible for us to become a spacefaring civilization, and we can become a civilization that will be able to overcome what I call our extinction behaviors. And I think, if you get an idea of what I mean by extinction behaviors, all you have to do is look over your left or right shoulder to find out that we're dumping plastic into the ocean beyond capacity to deal with it. We're pumping fossil fuels into our breathing atmosphere beyond our capacity to deal with. The litany will go on in terms of these extinction behaviors, and we have to find a way as a species to deal with these extinction behaviors. And I think the extraterrestrial concept of contact will allow us to recognize what those extinction behaviors are and deal with them in a rational way that means something. So we have to stop things like child abuse. We have to stop things like polluting our atmosphere. We have to stop things like the lies and obfuscation that our government is involved in. These are all extinction behaviors that we have to eliminate. And the reason why I feel, in my opinion, why whoever these civilizations are, why they've achieved the capacity to move at or beyond light speed or move interdimensionally. These are enlightened beings of some kind. We don't know exactly what they are. The contactees might know what they are, but we don't. The people that haven't had these experiences are still grappling with these issues. So they have somehow found a way to eliminate these extinction behaviors because they exist as a species, and they've got to a level of technology and spirituality and a recognition of everything is all connected. This whole sort of this law of oneness. We're still not really completely capable of understanding that all life, every single particle of matter in this universe, is connected in one way or another. And that is not something that our species is able at this point to recognize. So, I mean, this moves way, way beyond politics. This moves us into an era or to an echelon of understanding of who we are as a species, not as corporeal beings, but as spiritual beings, and how we can take our place in that whole galactic community to understand what we are as a species. And that's where we're headed. And that's what disclosure really, really means. It doesn't mean governments revealing files. It means that we are attempting to understand who we are as creatures in this huge, huge cosmos, where we take our place and how we take our place, and what our next step is in terms of becoming, non-corporeal beings after these containers that we have called bodies are finished. What happens then? And all these answers are going to be made known at some point in time, and that's what excites me more than anything, is that we'll realize who we are as a species and where we fit into this whole idea of what a cosmos really is.
One more question, and then we're going to get to the documents and hearings and everything like that. Does it seem like UFOs are becoming more bold and not hiding as much, or do you think people are just staring at the stars more as their interest comes to fruition? This comes from Galen in the SOR Space Travelers Room.
I think that just because people are becoming more and more aware of what's going on, the video cameras, and everybody's got a cell phone these days to take videos. They're like roving scientists. These people are roving reporters. I mean, they can capture a UFO sighting at the drop of a hat. So I think, first of all, there's a lot more people out there who are they're looking into the skies, and if they see something, they're taking pictures of it. So I think in one way, it's becoming more prevalent because more people are attuned to what's going on. I don't necessarily think that the UFOs or whatever these craft are, they're being any more bold than they have been in the past. I don't think that that's part of their whole agenda. I don't think. But the fact of the matter is, more and more people are seeing these more and more often, and they're wondering about them. So, I mean, these things have been part of our history for decades, if not, like I said earlier, if not thousands of years. And I think that more and more people, as I realize it anyways, are becoming more attuned to this whole thing. It's an attenuation kind of thing. You are paying attention. We as a species are paying more attention to what's going on, and more people are grabbing onto that attenuation. And when you get that kind of collective understanding of what's going on, the gross idea, the gross mechanisms of seeing a sighting, seeing a UFO or having a sighting of some kind, that's one thing, okay? But then what does it mean? What is the meaning behind that? Well, there's, it means we're not alone to begin with, and then there's all the other questions that I raised a few minutes ago as to who we are as a species. So it's not just the sighting and the boldness of these craft. It's what it means to us in terms of linguistics, how we use the language to describe these things, how we conceptualize it within our level of consciousness, how we determine what's the purpose behind of all of this, or where are we going with it. So a simple sighting can raise all of these issues in one fell swoop. So I think that's the important thing that we have to focus on, not whether these things are becoming more bold or how many more there are. What's the meaning behind it, and what is it telling us as a species? It's leading us to an understanding of something. And I think that's what we have to focus on. What is that understanding? What does it mean to us as a species that these things are doing what they're doing, whatever that is? Manifesting themselves. The UFO report in Canada came out, I guess, in March or April, where this year there's like 1,267 UFO sightings. Well, my response to that is, so what? Big deal. Okay, big deal. I mean, so, fine. In 2011, there was 1,900 UFO sightings. My reaction to that is, so what? What does it mean? What's the overall meaning behind all that? So we can't take our eye off the ball. The ball is what does it mean to us as a species? And yet the government and the media are yet to answer or at least address any of those questions. So we have to move them through that.
But in the end, Victor, and we only got about 2 minutes before we got to go to our final break of the night, this lack of knowledge that people like the Vatican, people like government officials, the president, whoever, are giving the public, even though they may be instituting soft disclosure in movies, Hollywood, video games,
right?
It still hasn't helped the common fear that many people have in regards to an extraterrestrial presence, mainly in the United States, where it is seemed to be common knowledge that ETs are bad. There are no good ones.
Yeah. That's, well, do I have enough time to answer that question?
Sure. Let's just do it.
Yeah. You raise a good point, and I think it's all part of the level of obfuscation that was put in place right after the CIA was inaugurated in the late 50s or early 60s, and it was part of a process of them not understanding what was going on, and recognizing that whoever these beings were, they represented a threat to us of some kind back then. And that threat, that whole threat, has been the way the CIA and all these other organizations, not just within the United States, but other governments too, that threat has always been the main thrust of how we identify with these extraterrestrials. And that threat has created a situation where the general public identifies these as a threat. And that aspect of this will never go away, or it's going to be extremely difficult for us to shed that whole idea of a threat. And it's a difficult process to really understand, because the government really is in a position of saying that because these extraterrestrials are so quote unquote powerful or whatever they are, that the government really doesn't have any control over the airspace. Like the United States Air Force does not have any control. The American public likes to think they do, but they don't have any control over the airspace. These UFOs come and go with impunity. They shut down our nuclear missiles, for crying out loud. So it's one thing for the government to deal with this issue on its own terms, but it's another issue for it to admit that they don't have any control. So what option do they have? Well, let's make these things be a threat, be perceived as a threat in the general public. We will get agencies like Disney, like Walt Disney, and other agencies to make sure that the movies that are put out are dealing with aliens as a threat. That's the name of the game. So the general public is on the side of the government, is saying, because we don't have any power in this issue, we want to portray these beings as a threat. So I think it's all part and parcel of a plan to make sure that the general public understands these things as a threat. And I don't know how long or how it will take place that this whole idea, this whole image of a threat is going to take for us to eliminate that from this issue and understand that we are being engaged by off-world civilizations. And if they were to mean us harm, David, and they would have done it long ago. I mean, it's so simple. If these are beings that are bent on total annihilation of the human species, they would have done it long ago. Long ago. Now, maybe they're intervening in different ways. Maybe they're affecting our DNA. Maybe they're infiltrating. We don't have any answers to that. But in terms of overall domination of the extremely hostile entities or extraterrestrials that some people believe they are, if they were that powerful, if they were that dominating, if they were that bent on intervening and annihilating us or taking us over or putting us to slavery, they would have done it a long ago. So why are they doing what they're doing? Why are they just sort of coming and going and sort of hinting here and hinting there? There's so many questions. So my sense is that we are on the brink of an awakening and not a threat. That's my perspective on it.
I'm going to end until the commercial here with this comment by Joe Algier in the SOR Space Travelers for you, Victor. Best guest ever on this show. So we're going to keep that. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio. I am your host, Dave Scott. We'll be right back after our final break of the night.
Are you interested in advertising on Spaced Out Radio?
Head to our website at spacedoutradio.com and click on our advertising tab. There you will find an assortment of ways you can get your product out there with us.
From the radio, commercials, to banners, to social media.
Have a product you'd like our host to endorse? We can do that too.
Visit spacedoutradio.com for more details.
Visit purpleplates.com today. For over 40 years, the Purple Energy Plates have been delivering amazing results for their many customers. Inspired by the great genius Nikola Tesla, the harmony, healing, and energetic effects of the plates have proven over and over to be beneficial and often miraculous to thousands of customers. With their money-back guarantee and the many benefits, how can you afford not to get one? Check their site for daily specials and choose from their many energy products. You won't be sorry.
Right here, this is where we divulge the fruit of our research. Here on the Webster Phenomena every Saturday night at 8 p.m. Pacific, 11 p.m. Eastern on Spaced Out Radio.
Attention Spaced Out Radio listeners. For only $5 a month, you can join Spaced Out Radio Space Travelers. Your membership at spacedoutradio.com will give you access to private fan area on the website, get you a monthly newsletter, draws for monthly swag, and a whole lot more. Sign up today to become a part of the Spaced Out Radio experience.
Strange creatures lurking in the night, the sounds of wood knocking in the forest, odd happenings right out of a fictional world. These are the reports I love. Hi there, this is author Ronald Murphy, and I would love it if you join me and Spaced Out Radio host Dave Scott the second Wednesday of every month on our journey into the unknown land of cryptozoology at spacedoutradio.com. From Mothman to Frogman and everything in between. Hey, they don't call me the crypto guru for nothing.
Greetings and salutations, space travelers, from the Chronicles of the Unknown team.
What is Chronicles of the Unknown? I keep hearing about this thing.
It's a new paranormal reality TV show based right here in beautiful British Columbia, Canada. Follow our team as we uncover claims of activity on the Caribou Gold Rush Trail. You can also follow us here every third Monday, where two members of our team will be available to answer your questions. We'll give you some equipment updates and some of our experiences on the road, right here on Spaced Out Radio.
The last Monday of the month on Spaced Out Radio is a night of psychic vision, mediumship, UFO and ET contact, Bigfoot stories, animal communication, and so much more with me, Elizabeth Anglin. I'd love it if you would join host Dave Scott and I on the myriad of topics we delve into. Every month, we share new views that may help you understand your own experiences. So tune on in at spacedoutradio.com and stamp your cosmic passport.
Did you know that Spaced Out Radio runs 7 days a week? Hi, it's James Tyson from Spaced Out Weekend. Every Saturday and Sunday night, starting at 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, you can join me and my guests for some great chatter about what's going on out in the universe, or even in that dark part of the basement you really don't want to go back into. Well, let's find the answers to your experiences together. So come on up to Uncle Jimbo's cabin on the weekend. For more information, look us up at spacedoutradio.com.
Missed most of tonight's show? Don't worry, you didn't miss a thing. You can head to our website, spacedoutradio.com, and download our archives for free. And don't forget to get your Space Travelers membership today. Now, back to tonight's show. Welcome back to the final half hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. I am your host, Dave Scott. Thank you so much for joining in. If you're calling in on the Spaced Out Radio Network, or if you're calling in and listening on the SHR Media Network, on Spreaker, at Spaced Out Radio Show. If you're in the chat room, thank you for sticking around. Also, Paranormal Forum Online, on Facebook, Euphoria Chronicles, as well as our flagship chat room, the SOR Space Travelers. Absolutely appreciate you all tuning in tonight. Victor Viggiani is our guest. As tomorrow night on the show, we're going to stick in the ET realm. The Alien Connection with our Keith Andrews happens the first Friday of every month. We'll be talking to Keith about alien species tomorrow night on the show. Remember, you can follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, I can be followed at Dave Scott, SOR. Our YouTube channel is Spaced Out Radio Show. That's where we store our archive. Subscribe to that. And our website is spacedoutradio.com. For the final time, from Zland Communications, we bring Victor Viggiani back in. His website, zlandcommunications.blogspot.com, if you want to check out his work. Victor, thank you so much for doing the full show.
Oh, it's wonderful to be with you.
And I do want to let our audience know that we're going to talk about UFOs and the Vatican with you sometime in August. We're going to try and book that date here after this show is done. And I know there's a few people already asking about that. That's why I brought it up to you during the break. Mm-hmm. But before we get any further, you are investigating some very special documents that has NORAD involved, the Northern Organization for Radar Air Defense, which basically protects North America. Right. What's going on with these documents?
Okay, where do I start? It goes back to my first investigation of with the access to information process here in Canada. It's like the FOIA, Freedom of Information Act in the United States. The same sort of thing. You apply for information about certain things. Back in 2009, I applied and I asked the Freedom of Information people to give me documents relating to jets that are scrambled to chase so-called unknown objects or whatever. So they sent me a whole package. They sent me over 100 pages of UFO files, and so there's a lot of really good stuff in there. There's some fantastic stuff actually. But one specific thing hit me square in the face, and it was a flight log, an air traffic control flight log that described how two CF-18s out of Comox Air Force Base in British Columbia were scrambled to chase, 3 UFOs that were caught on radar. And they knew they were UFOs because they were traveling very, very quickly. They don't use the term UFOs. They use the word unknowns, or TOI, tracks of interest. So these jets are scrambled to chase these 3 things. They go up, and these things are at 35,000 feet, like way, way above common flight areas for ordinary craft. So these jets go and take off, and the air traffic control, you have to see the document. It's a line by line, literally minute by minute chronology of what these jets are doing, and these 7 or 8 pages are literally filled with at 00111296. The jets did this. At 007, the jets did that. These lines are just, the pages are filled with it. And it describes where these jets are going, what their direction is, and what they're attempting to look for. And then it injects another line, a series of lines, where a medical evacuation jet out of Anchorage, Alaska, is also part of the scenario. This medical evacuation jet sees these 3 unknowns and tells the jets, we can see them. 2 have dropped off. 1 is continuing on, and we can't catch them. And so the jets pursue these 3 unknowns in the direction of what the radar is telling them, and they eventually catch up to one of these things. And the actual statement in the document says, contact made at 35,000 feet. Now, I read through this thing. I've read through the document 100 times, David, and there's no gun camera information on this. There's no necessarily commentary about this. It's very, very what clinically stated. So these things were moving at 35,000 feet. Then they outpaced, and these jets couldn't catch them. Okay, so when they say contact made, maybe it was a visual contact. We don't know. Plus there's parts of it that are whited out. Our government doesn't black these documents; they white them out. So there's gaps, 2 to 3 minute gaps as to what's really going on. So we have to deal with the information plus the gaps. So the fact of the matter is, I asked for situations where jets were scrambled, and I got this document. So we know that A, NORAD scrambles jets to track unknowns, and B, that there was some sort of contact made with these craft, and that they couldn't catch them. Now, what that means, I'm not quite sure. But the fact of the matter is that the CF-18s made sort of contact. So what I did was, after that, I wrote to the Minister of Defense, Peter MacKay at the time, and I asked him 10 questions about this document. And I don't want to go through all the 10 questions, but I said, are you aware of this stuff? Do you know about this? And I want an answer. Why are NORAD jets, being scrambled to chase these unknown objects? And so he wrote back to me in a letter, saying that, well, in standardization, so all of these different terms around, so on and so forth. The bottom line is, A, he couldn't find the same bloody document that I found. He said, I'm not aware of the document that you're referring to. And I have the document. It's got NORAD written all over it. He couldn't find it. And then B, he goes on to explain to what these things might be. Okay? He said, well, it could be a small aircraft without a transponder, or a flock of birds. Now, I don't know. I fly an airplane. I fly Cessnas, okay? Cessnas cannot fly at 30,000 feet. Plus, Cessnas cannot outpace CF-18s. And I'm not sure, maybe you are, of birds that can fly at 35,000 feet and that can fly faster than CF-18s. So the man is full of crap, okay? This is part of the government obfuscation. And the Minister of Defense, Peter, I will go on record saying this man lied to me. Okay? He lied to me. And he lied to us. Okay? And I attempted to get clarification, which he did not send. But he wrote directly back to me with this bilge water of an explanation. So, what does that mean? He either doesn't know what's going on, or he is fabricating information about this event, this specific event. Contact was made with 3 unknown objects that outpaced CF-18 jets. So that's the first document that I'll be bringing forward. Now, subsequent to that, I made another request, and I got a response to my request from the North American Aerospace Defense Command, from the NORAD operations in Vandenberg, in Peterson Air Force Base in Colorado, from the head of NORAD. And the subject of the whole matter is so on. It's called Unknown Tracks Reported by the U.S. Freedom. I'm reading right from the document right now. And they go through an explanation. I don't want to read the whole thing, but they're saying is that these unknown tracks identified U.S. Freedom of Information request, reference numbers, and so on and so forth, cannot be released as Exemption 15 applies, which protects disclosure for national security information. And anyone in possession of documents that refer to these situations can be considered espionage or guilty of espionage. So the bottom line there is, I am in possession of documents that say that our scrambled jets made contact with these craft. So I have a document that says that. So I am guilty of espionage, according to this document. The law prohibits the transmission or revelation of information contained in any records of unknown track reports in any manner to unauthorized persons. I have a document that says that, so I am guilty of espionage. Come after me. The next thing this thing says is that, however, the NORAD commander has approved the release of the following information regarding tracks of interest of unknown tracks. The yearly average in the past 5 years has been 1,800 tracks of interest and 75 intercepts. Now, your listeners are going to have to decide what tracks of interest really mean. Are they UFOs? Are they birds? Are they Russian flights coming over our airspace and not being intercepted or being intercepted? We don't know. But the fact of the matter is, once again, they don't know. They call them tracks of interest or unknowns. So the bottom line there is, I'm guilty of espionage because I'm in possession of documents that refer to this stuff. So that's the whole point of what I'm trying to do. I am trying to create a crisis of information here, David. a severe crisis of information, that I'll stand accused of that. And that's why I'm having the hearing. And I'm going to bring this up at the hearing and state, in fact, that I am guilty of espionage. Go after me. Tell me that I'm wrong about this whole situation. Because I have a letter from the commander of NORAD saying that NORAD does this stuff. And as soon as that information gets out, anyone who has the information is guilty of espionage. So, bring me to court. Whatever you want to do, I'm willing to do it, so that this information comes out. So these two documents are key in what this whole hearing is going to be all about. And I've got names and places and information that will, shake this stuff loose and hopefully have the media understand that this is much, much bigger than they ever anticipated. So that's the bottom line of those two documents.
That's incredible, and I do have to pass a word on from Chris in the Spaced Out Radio chat room on Spreaker after the words you just said. He's saying, make sure Victor publicly states he will never commit suicide.
Well, no, that won't happen.
Well, you know what? There always has to be some sort of protection. Victor, that brings up a good point, though. A lot of people who are in these fields who are, quote, end quote, in the know or getting close to being in the know, they're followed. Their phones are tapped. Their computers are hacked. They have black vehicles following them everywhere. Maybe visits from men in black. Have you ever had anything like that? Have you ever had anybody come up to you or a phone call that was strange saying, you better stop talking about this stuff?
Never. Never.
Do you feel fortunate about that?
You know what? I don't care. I really don't care, David. I'm being really honest with you here. I don't care. Fortunate, not. It's not part of my thinking process. I just don't care. I have an affidavit filed with my solicitor, my personal lawyer, to take action if I do feel threatened or if something does happen to me. So he has my authorization to take action publicly if anything does happen to me or anyone in my family. So I did this. God, holy smoke! A good 20 years ago. 20 years ago. I did that just to put that card on the table, and no, I don't see that. And if that did happen, if I felt threatened, I have my own way of dealing with that. I have a very, very specific plan in place as to how I might deal with that. And it's. I mean, I know that there's been situations where families have been threatened, and people have been threatened in different ways, or family members. I'm willing to take those risks because this issue is so big. Okay, if this was something, relatively prosaic, I might, bend and give in, but this issue is far, far too big for me to back away from anything that the government or anyone beyond the government could do. I'm willing to do anything, and I mean anything, to get this information out. And if that means sacrificing my own well-being, so be it. As long as the truth comes out. I mean, I would not do it in vain. I wouldn't do it in vain, for sure. But I have access to people in situations where, if anything does occur to me, it'll be made known in a very, very specific way. So it's not something that occupies my mind one little bit. I mean, if I got a visit from somebody tomorrow at my front door, I know exactly how I'd react. And being of Italian background, I don't know if you've ever seen The Godfather, but they have, we as a civilization, as an ethnic group, we have ways of dealing with people that are not the nicest. People say, you've got this information or that. The basic bottom line is, I'm not a very nice person, David. Okay, and my level of threshold of anger is very, very short, very short. And when I'm threatened, or when someone says something to me that threatens me, I have ways of dealing with it. and I can hold my own against anyone. And if it comes push comes to shove, I have ways of dealing with it, and I'm fully prepared to deal with it at the most basic venal level possible to make my point. And if that means taking violent action, I will do it. And that's how important this issue is to me. That's how very, very important this issue is. And it's not a pleasant thought, but it's something that I grew up with. I grew up with this mind, and I hate being lied to. And the people that I love and know in this whole issue, they hate being lied to too. So we need to take the action that's necessary to protect ourselves, first of all, and then to get this information out. And like I said earlier, I will do anything to make sure this stuff gets out, and that's what we're all about with this hearing.
Well, I'm going to remind myself mentally never to push you around if you're coming out of watching a Rocky movie, because that gets all you Italians fired right up.
I'm sorry. Yeah, that's just the way we are. I'm sorry.
No, I mean that with all humor.
Yeah.
When it comes to these documents with NORAD and, you being held, could be held in espionage, and you say you're not worried about any repercussions, and you have a security blanket in place in case something does happen, is it a matter of preparing for the worst but hoping for the best?
Well, I think the way that I personally am handling this issue with the number of people that I'm engaging in the hearings and the number of, like, the Richard Dolans and the Bassetts of the world, they're in a very similar position to me, and maybe even more so, because Stephen Bassett has put himself out much more than I have. So was Dolan, and so was Nick Pope. I mean, these are all people that are going to be at the hearing giving testimony about it. So they're at just as much risk, if not more, than I am. I mean, I'm not a main player. I'm not a major player in this. It's just that I brought these people together because I try to be a consensus builder in this, and I want these people at this hearing to give their testimony in front of the media and academics. This is my role. I see myself as a collegial entity creating consensus where people are going to come together to hear the world's best experts on this on June 25th of this year. This is not going to happen again, and it's the first time it's ever happened in Canada. So the reason I'm doing it is to get the best possible minds together so that they can be presented to the media and say, here are the goods. This is what's really going on. And that's my role. I don't necessarily think that I'm going to be the major activist in all of this. I'm just a facilitator. I'm someone who's bringing people together to state their cases in many different ways. And each one of these people, Paul Hellyer, Nick Pope, Stanton Friedman, Grant Cameron, Bassett, and Dolan, they each have a very, very unique perspective, a well-researched and very specific and authentic position on this. And the media needs to hear each one of these people. They need to hear me. They need to hear these people who have done the work and who have all of the background of this, that can explain it 10 times better than I ever could. So this is what the media needs to hear. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing with the hearing and creating a situation where this openness can occur and people can say, well, you know what? This is something that we need to talk about. This is real. This is not just a fabrication. It's not just conspiracy theories. This stuff is real. And that's the point I'm trying to make with the hearing.
Besides the gentleman you spoke of, the Alien Cosmic Expo takes place between June 24th and 26th in Brantford, Ontario.
Right.
Who else will be speaking there at the hearings as experiencers? Let's get the public really charged up on this.
Yeah, well, essentially the hearing people are going to be the ones on the panel. Of course, Paul Hellyer. Okay, he'll be a major witness. Richard Dolan will be on the panel. Stephen Bassett from the U.S. lobbyist will be there. Nick Pope, the former British Ministry of Defense official who was in charge of the UFO desk. Grant Cameron will be there, the fantastic UFO researcher who has brought forward all the information on the presidents. Stanton Friedman will be there, retired physicist, and he's an expert at documents. And of course, Travis Walton, a major experiencer. He was the subject of the Hollywood movie Fire in the Sky. And as Travis and I spoke a couple of weeks ago, and he's very, very enthusiastic about my approach. And I spoke with him in very similar terms as we're talking right now, and he's very, very enthusiastic about being part of this panel. So he will be a big draw there. So those are the 7 people involved in this, and I think it's the best lineup possible. It's the best possible. There are no other, as far as I'm concerned, experts that are better on the entire planet about this whole issue, other than possibly Daniel Sheehan, who I invited, but he can't make it, and also possibly Michael Sala from Hawaii. Michael was also unable, but we sort of had to limit it to a certain number. We didn't want to overcrowd the panel. So I think with Grant and Stanton and Steve and Richard and Mr. Hellier and Travis Walton, we have the cream of the crop that will give the best possible testimony that anyone could ever imagine. If you cannot understand what they're trying to say about this, then you might as well just leave the room and go hide under a rock somewhere, because these people will give you the goods far and wide and explain why this issue is so meaningful to us as a human species. So I would invite everyone to either buy a ticket. We're hoping to have it streamed live, and you can go to the conference site. I've got it here. Where the heck is it? It is just the Alien Cosmic Expo. Just Google Alien Cosmic Expo. You can buy your tickets or whatever you want to do. Plug into hopefully we can get the live streaming done. It's just this stuff costs so much money. It's just amazing how much money this actually costs to do this stuff. And I know the sponsors that we have are putting out the dollars, and that's a very difficult part of it. So we're looking for a broad public support on this, so that people come out, and that we can pay our bills, and then B, we can get this message out.
And it's going to be a very, very good time.
Oh, it will. It will be.
The one thing that I like about it is you have the who's who of the guests, and the public's going to be able to be around them. And have that opportunity to be around these experts, to chat with them one-on-one in situations, and to have their questions answered directly. I think it's so user-friendly, this conference. It's much more so than what any other normal conference will be.
Yeah. The good thing about the whole situation, really, the conference is not the appropriate word. This is an inquiry. We are setting it up. It's a quasi-judicial inquiry where we'll have these 7 people on a panel giving testimony, and then we're going to have a panel of journalists challenging them. I've got these journalists on the panel, David, who are skeptics. These are people that I have chosen that don't believe in this stuff, but they're open-minded enough to say, yes, okay, I'll be part of that panel, but I want to throw my best questions at, convince me this stuff is right. Because I don't believe it. That's the whole key part of this whole hearing. We've got panelists who are not convinced of the issue. And I want these panelists and other media to see these good questions and say, Mr. Bassett, what's this about Hillary Clinton wanting? And that's all garbage as far as I'm concerned. Convince me that she means something. Mr. Dolan, tell me about the fact that UFOs have shut down nuclear weapons. Come on now, you've got to be full of hot air. Convince me, Mr. Pope. You were part of a desk in the British Ministry of Defense, fielding questions about UFOs and reports. Yes, tell me about these reports. I want to know. Mr. Cameron, Jimmy Carter had a UFO sighting? No, that can't possibly. Tell me about that. So I'm wanting these journalists to challenge each one of my guests, each one of my panelists on the veracity of what they're doing. And in that interplay, we're hoping to say that these journalists will say, holy smoke, this can't be true. But the only conclusion they can come to, because I know these people, these men, are going to give their best and say, this is the information, this is authentic, write about it. Write about it and make sure our government knows about it. Make this an issue that we can, like I talked about earlier, make this an issue that we can all talk. I want to see this stuff in the newspaper tomorrow and the next day and the next day and the next day. Now, I'm shooting high. How well we do with this, I don't know. But the fact of the matter is, we are going to get this stuff out into the press one way or another. And that's why I'm hoping these panelists from the Toronto Sun and universities and so on and so forth can get this information out and make it something that we can all talk about the next day and continue to talk about afterwards. So that's the direction the hearing is going, and it's a bit of a risk. I'm not sure where it's going to go or how it's going to work out, but, you know, if you don't take a risk, you don't realize your dreams.
That is the truth. Alien Cosmic Expo, June 24th to 26th in Brantford, Ontario, Canada. You can go to their website to check it out. Google it if you need to. Get your tickets, especially if you're on the East Coast and you want one of the best Cosmic Expos out there to hear some of the best speakers around on these topics, professionals. This is the one to go to. Victor Viggiani, thank you so much for being on Spaced Out Radio tonight. I'm going to get you to hold on for a couple minutes while I close out this show. We want to thank Victor Viggiani once again. Zland Communications.blogspot.com is his website if you want to check it out. What a great 3 hours. That went quick. One of the quickest shows we've had in a long time. I think we could have gone another 2-3 hours once again. That was heavy. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks to everyone listening in on the SHR Media Network, on Paranormal Forum, Spaced Out Radio Chat Room on Spreaker, and on Facebook at Euphoria Chronicles and our flagship SOR Space Travelers. Great to have you all with us tonight. Tomorrow night on the show, 9 p.m. Pacific, midnight Eastern, our Keith Andrews is back. First Friday of the month means it's the Alien Connection. That is with Keith tomorrow night. Remember, you can follow us on Twitter at Spaced Out Radio. Give our Facebook page a like, Spaced Out Radio Show. On Instagram, I can be followed at Dave Scott, SOR. Our YouTube channel is Spaced Out Radio Show. Subscribe to our archives there. And of course, our website, which will have a brand new look once again, coming up in a couple of weeks, is spacedoutradio.com. Our man, the music god, the music myth, and the music legend, Ron Bumblefoot Thal, rocking us out. Click on our banner on spacedoutradio.com. Show you how to get a hold of Bumblefoot. Say hello. Tell him you heard him on Spaced Out Radio. You love his music. He does reply. The former GNR lead guitarist. Taking us out once again as he normally does. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio. We're going to wrap up the week tomorrow night. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll talk to you in exactly 21 hours from now. Appreciate it. Tell a friend about the show. If you haven't already, tell a friend. We'd love to mention new listeners on the air. Have a good one. Good night.
I know you're out there somewhere. This is the new totalitarian state. 1,000 eyes are waiting for you to break. Stay in line, don't make a mistake. We're wild.